still says going live, and we're live.
Okay, my name is Julia Singer. I go by Mandy. I met you, Sean, in 2014 while I was home in the streets of Boulder. And it was probably, 2016 that we started really talking via Facebook and getting to have our friendship. I know it was before you went to Virginia.
Yeah, you met me when I had just quit smoking cigarettes.
I did, because I remember we were at the end of Pearl Street Mall by Old Chicago, and I was flying, and I'm pretty sure Joseph was there. And I went to you, and I asked to bum a cigarette, and you're like, nope, I quit. And then I also remember you, like, one time you came up, and you're like, do you have change for coffee? And like, you needed like 54 cents for coffee. Yep. But, I knew who you were. I didn't know you were Rabbit's brother for the longest time. But I knew who you were on the streets. I knew you were a good guy. You know, people would talk about how you were trustworthy and you would help people. You were one of the few good guys that a girl could go to and be like, hey, I need help. And know that at the end of come nighttime, while you're making sure they're warm, they have their blankets, they're safe, they weren't going to have to worry about you suddenly being like, oh, in order for you to get this from me, you have to give me something. You weren't that dude at all. There were dudes like that on the street, but you were not one of
them. I want to fast forward a little bit, if that's all right, and we can get back to some of those questions. The situation that happened before Natalie was killed with your son, can you explain a little bit about that?
Yes. So my oldest son was on the streets homeless with me. He was an adult by this time. And I had not seen him since right before Thanksgiving of 2017. We came down from our camp outside of Nederland. It was me and him and the guy I was with at the time, Terry. And the situation was really intense between Terry and I, and my son had too much. That's what I found out later. I didn't know it at the time. But we got into Nederland to go to the food bank. I hurt my foot really bad when we came down the mountain. And so we decided that Terry and I would go on to Boulder, have my foot looked at the hospital. And we ran into Ogre there, and Ryan's like, hey, I'm just going to hang out with Ogre. And I was like, cool, I trust him. And so Terry and I went to Boulder, then made our way up to Fort Collins. And then we didn't get back until the first week of December. And when we got back to camp, it was abandoned. Like, it looked like they just picked up and left. And of course, I was very concerned because I hadn't heard from my son since right before Thanksgiving, when he had told me that him and Ogre were going to Longmont to fly because of the holiday. It was very scary. And it was hard for me to get a hold of people because of the situation with Terry. He had control of everything. He was basically keeping me, I was being held hostage. So when I was finally able to get a hold of my daughter and let her know what was going on, it was one of the times I managed to get away from Terry for a little while. And that's when you and I started talking. You would message me and I let you know, hey, my son's missing. My daughter had posted up a post about my son missing. And I know you did a video in regards to that. And unfortunately, timing just happened to be the video was done the same day Natalie went missing. And of course, I didn't know anything about her at this time. So you helped out. I know you promoted that. You kept reposting my daughter, her post about my son missing. You were the one who was able to not only track down and get a hold of Ogre, but to actually get him to open up enough for us to find out that, they'd gotten really drunk the night before. And then when he woke up, Ryan was gone. And, that to me was so important, because before that I was worried. Is my son, has he been assaulted? Did he hurt himself? I don't know what's going on. My son does suffer from mental health and other issues. So when Ogre had told you, and then he actually finally talked to me, that Ryan had just taken off, it made me feel better to know that, okay, well, he just took off, maybe he needs space, but we were still worried as a family. as a side note, to kind of to point what Boulder's about, when I told my daughter that Ryan was missing, she contacted her brother, my other son, Robert, and Robert called. They called here from Nebraska to Boulder County and was telling them, we need to put out a missing persons, file a missing persons. He hasn't been heard of since like the 23rd of November, and we're very worried. And they refused to take a missing persons report. They would not take it. My son Robert had to drive to Colorado and file and insist on filing that report in person. I don't know if he would speak about it because we're not on speaking terms, but my daughter is willing to speak about it because she's aware of this part of the story. And so you helped us out, and then everything with Natalie happened. And unfortunately, Terry got back a hold of me and proceeded to terrorize my life for months. So, you and I didn't have a lot of contact at that point, and I wasn't really aware of what was going on with the Natalie thing.
I was on constant Facebook bans at the time. If you called everything spam, then if enough people called it spam, then they would remove it, and I'd get put on another 30-day Facebook ban.
I remember that. I do not even know. I remember that you had mentioned that you were getting reported. We talked not just through Messenger, but I know we were texting. I just don't have that phone anymore.
Yeah, well, that's another thing. The thing with Facebook, like, how often do homeless people have their phones lost, stolen, or can't pay the bill and have to get another?
Or even if you get a government lifeline phone, you can't find a place to charge it. You'll get charged with theft of utilities. You get kicked out of the restaurants. It's very, very hard to stay in touch with people via social media and phones.
So,
period.
With losing phones and all that, when you lose everybody's contacts, how important is Facebook for being able to stay in contact?
That's the main way I stayed in contact with everybody. There was a time when I didn't have a phone number. I had a device I could put on Wi-Fi. I could get into the library. There were times I went to Sister Carmen's and used their computer just to get on Facebook and tell my kids I'm still alive. Because they wouldn't hear from me for weeks because I wasn't able to get to where I needed to communicate. If you don't have Facebook as a homeless person or some sort of dependable platform to keep in touch with people, you're fucked. Honestly, you're fucked. And Facebook's the main platform because not everybody else uses like WhatsApp or text now or any of those other things.
Now that the video, I'm sorry to interrupt you. The video that Natalie's mother had gotten on and accused me of being a stalker and things like that. Who was that about your son?
That was about my son. Yes, it was about my son. And I finally found that video tonight and saw what she said and set the record straight because that was about my son. And when I know you had mentioned it before, like you had told me people were saying things I didn't realize.
They were doing more than saying things. I was getting assaulted by police officers.
Because you're autistic, I'm autistic. We process things differently. You and I don't even work the same because it's a spectrum. And so sometimes things are said to me and I don't quite grasp what it means, like the abstract, and I'm like, okay, whatever. But when I see it right in front of me, then I'm like, oh God. And when I saw that video that you recorded on the Sword and Scale podcast, when I heard that part, I was shaking, Sean. I was shaking so bad. I called the number on that website and complained and told them they needed to correct that because that is a very dark and traumatic time in my life. And it was a very scary time in my life because I was dealing with domestic violence. I was dealing with being held against my will. I was dealing with being trafficked by this man that I was with. And he prevented me from really getting in hold of my family for a long time. And that was kind of led into why my son was like, dude, I need a timeout. I'm going to disappear, which I didn't know he needed at the time. Of course, I thought maybe somebody found him and killed him, or maybe he lost his mind and hurt himself, or, so many things. So yeah, that's a very dark time in my life, and to see how my family's trauma, something that happened to not just me, but it was my daughter and my other son and my other daughter and even my parents, our family's trauma, something that was hard for us, is being used incorrectly and falsely. They did not have a right to do that. It wasn't about, had nothing to do with Natalie's disappearance at all. And it had nothing to do with her. It had everything to do with me.
A lot of people were claiming that obviously I must have done something to Natalie or known something about Natalie because I posted that up before she disappeared.
Yep, and that is not correct. You know, you had no clue. I know you had no clue. And even like the bits and pieces I heard back then, I was like, there's no way Sean would do that. You're not a stalker. I know what a stalker is. I've been stalked. I've been followed. I was followed from Fort Collins down to Pueblo by Terry. That man found me in places I didn't think he'd find me. So, you know, he copied my contacts on Facebook and Google onto his own account so that he could keep track of me. So, yeah, he knew where my friends were. He knew where my safety nests were. I know what a stalker is. You're not a stalker.
It's scary when people do that, isn't it?
I was scared for my life. I would go to certain people. Like, I don't know if you remember Bobby. He went by Red. He has, like, the...
I do. His name is, I know his first and last name. I've been in contact. Bobby. Got it. I have him on here. I can find him, actually.
I know. I don't know why I can't remember his last name. Sims. Bobby Sims.
That's it. Yes. Shovelhead Red.
Yep. Him. Shovelhead Red. Yes. So he and I were really close for a while, but then when everything with Terry was happening, he would get word to Terry if he saw me in Boulder, and then Terry would come and get me, and then Terry would give Red the meth. And it wasn't just in Boulder that this was happening. It was happening in Thornton and in the Denver, the Thornton, North Glen area where I would try to go. It happened several times. This kid he goes by the name of Tree. His name is actually Tyler Greenwald. He's a really big dude. He did the same thing. He tried to convince me he was interested and he wanted to, get with me and all of this stuff. And it was simply keeping an eye on me so that he could then turn me over to Terry. And he got paid in meth to do so. And people are like, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen to people. It happened to me. I never thought that. I didn't believe that happened to people either until it happened to me.
How big is human trafficking in Boulder?
It's one of the hot spots. And I know that's not just from people that have gone missing around Boulder, but I'm also not just have been experiencing the homeless community in Boulder and Fort Collins, and roundabouts, but I'm also a very active member in the rainbow community and, the hippie people.
Yep.
And the word has been put out. Boulder is a red light. You are not to go into Boulder unless absolutely necessary. It is not safe. You may end up disappearing. This is something that I've been told when I was at a gathering. I've been told when I've been around other family members in Arizona. Boulder is off limits because it's easy to prey on the homeless and the travelers who don't have access to technology or may not keep in touch with everybody, and they're gone. And then you never see them again. So yeah, Boulder's a pretty big hub for human trafficking.
When you were in
Boulder...
Boulder...
because the cops are crooked as fuck in Boulder.
They are. They absolutely are.
So my experience with the cops and stuff with Terry, the first time Terry put hands on me was in Lafayette. We were camping in the field behind the Walmart. And I finally got away from him. He woke me up screaming in my ear and digging his hands into my ribs that have nerve damage and screaming, "I know you fucked cinder block." And of course, I'm asleep. I have no clue what he's talking about.
He was a witness in the death of Daniel Kitlitz. You remember Shady Dan?
Vaguely. But yeah, I know that cinder block was a witness to that.
Brain damage too.
When I got away from Terry, I went to the Walmart and had them call the police. And Terry convinced them that I was the problem, and they threatened to arrest me and press charges against me. So I agreed to go to detox instead. And after that, if the cops showed up for any reason for altercations between Terry and I, they refused to help me. It wasn't until the cops were notified, it was Memorial Day of 2018, and it was the Netherlands police were notified of an incident in West Magnolia, and that was him assaulting me. So it took that happening before I got any legal intervention, and I still had to call and hound and yell and scream and threaten, like, to go public before they would actually charge Terry with trying to kill me. He threw weapons at me. Yeah, it was fucking hell. It was hell. And then by the time they did press charges and I got my criminal protection order, I left Boulder. And I tried to stay out of Boulder itself. We stayed mostly between Wadsworth and First and Alameda, all the way down to Broomfield at 120th and Sheridan. We rarely went to Lafayette and Longmont. We would go to Lafayette sometimes because it wasn't so bad, but I had to stay out of Boulder. And this is an interesting thing that happened. When I went back to Boulder in 2017, it was in May. The night I ended up in Boulder, it was dark. I was walking up to Evan G. Fine, and I was right by the municipal building. And Steinman and another cop, he was a black guy, and I don't remember his name, stopped me.
Was he bald? Kind of
Yes.
skinny?
Yes, he's kind of chunky-ish, bigger. Like, he wasn't taller than Steinman.
All right, different officer than what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Because one of the officers who was threatening me when I tried to turn in the assaults in Boulder he was about Steinman's height, but he was kind of skinny.
Yeah, I can't remember because I wasn't paying attention to him. I had my eye on Steinman because he's a piece of shit. And he looked at me and he goes, "Singer, what are you doing here?" And because he knew who I was. And I told him, like, "Oh, I'm just here waiting for my friend to come pick me up." I didn't tell him that I was homeless again. And he told me, "You need to leave. This is not a safe place for you anymore." What the fuck did that mean?
Yeah, if you'd have said that to him, they would have called it a indirect threat and they would have arrested you for it.
Yeah. And he wouldn't leave me alone until I actually got on the phone with my friend that I told I was going up to. I got on the phone and I was like, "Hey, I got this police officer here and he won't leave me alone unless he knows you're on the way to come get me." And she already knew what she needed to do. She's like, "Okay, let me talk to him." "Okay, yeah, I'm on my way. I'm almost there. Don't worry." And so once they left, I had told it up to Evan G. Fine so Red could give me some bedding and I could sleep and have a safe place to be because I was homeless. That was my first day homeless. I was done. Like, I had nowhere to go. And
what's homelessness like for a woman without a road dog?
You will find the man that is the least abusive and fuck him just to have safety, period. It's really hard to be a woman on the streets alone. And when I've woken up with men assaulting me. Like, straight up had their hands in my pants, trying to pull them down, trying to rape me. So I had to have some form of male protection with me. Otherwise, I wasn't going to be safe. So you have to decide, who do I choose? There's not a lot of decent guys on the streets at all. At all. And I wasn't a warm, hard girl when I hit the streets. You know, I was probably, well, they call it fresh meat. I was a good looking woman. And so it was hard. I mean, I'm not sure if you remember my whole incident with Mike Smith, the child molester, the registered sex offender. Yeah, he got a hold of me. It's hard. Another guy named Anthony Parker, also a registered sex offender, he raped me. So did Keith. So did another guy, I can't remember his name. Like, the number of times I've been raped or sexually assaulted on the streets because I was alone is horrible. There was a time I left Joseph at the end of Pearl Street, who's trying to go down to the bathrooms on Pearl Street, and Anthony Parker grabbed me up and pulled me off down to the Peace House behind the Methodist Church and raped me over there. And there were people there, they knew what he was doing, and nobody would stop it. So, yeah, you can't be solo. You have to have somebody there for you. Unless you're like Desiree, and even she gets assaulted.
Right.
Even the toughest woman who will put a man down, like, it's not safe. And that's why women end up with the men that they do. Can you bring in income? Can you meet my basic needs? And can you keep me safe? That is why after all those months of running from Terry, I was finally like, fuck it. I'd rather be with somebody what I know to expect than all these other people doing more harm to me and then sending me back to him anyways. And so that's why I ended up with him again. It was, I believe it was June. It was the weekend of the Dead and Company show of 2018. And I'd given up. I was never going to get away from him. He had women on the streets coming up threatening me that if I didn't get the legal charges dismissed, because they weren't quite official, he knew they were looking into it. And I didn't have the protection order yet. So I was being threatened. So the only way to stay safe was to be with him. And the only reason I got away is because that day while we were flying a corner on the sign on the corner, Joseph found us. That was it. As soon as I saw Joseph, I knew I didn't leave right then and there. I had to wait a few days until Terry picked a fight. And there was a reason for me to go. And then I waited 2 weeks before I went back to Boulder to find Joseph because I was so terrified. I went and hid out with friends that were in my life prior to me ever being homeless. And then I went down to my son in Pueblo because that's where he ended up after he'd gone missing. He ended up down in Pueblo. And if it had not been for Joseph, I would have never gotten away from that. I'd probably be dead. And that's the reality of homelessness for women on the streets. There is no safe place.
What's it like when you try to turn it into the police?
They don't fucking listen. The only reason I got any action done on Mike Smith is because he was already a registered sex offender who had already been on the police radar for assaulting women. And I want to say it was Detective, I believe, Stephen Farber that took the case with Mike. And it took me 4 months to report the final assault that he did to me. And it took Chris through the Bridge House being my advocate that they listened. And I know the only reason they listened to me and took it serious and it went to trial and everything was because he was already on the police radar. They already wanted to get him locked up.
Is that Chris Mitchell?
No. It was not. It was Michael Smith. I don't know if you know him.
No, I mean the Chris that was at the carriage house.
No, Chris, the gal Chris that had the multicolored hair.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, the woman Chris. Yeah, her. And I know that she was the one that handled like case management for the sex offenders. So she was familiar with Mike, and they just wanted him off the streets. And the most they could get with the trial was they were able to prove that he had prior knowledge of my vulnerability and being a victim and previous sexual assault and previous drug addiction. And he utilized those and the drugs to lure me into a relationship and trap me into a relationship and then abuse me. I did not know he was a sex offender when him and I got together. I had no clue. Nobody on the streets told me. They all knew, but nobody bothered to tell me.
If I'd have known, I'd have gone and gotten Zach Boatman. He's scary. Me and him got a lot of people on buses.
Yeah, I know he is. I had gone up to Denver. This was by this time it was the beginning of June, because my daughter had her second child, Gracie, premature at 24 weeks. So she was in the NICU at Children's Hospital. And so I went to them at the Ronald McDonald House to see my daughter and watch her older daughter, who was only 7.5, 8 months old, because they're really super close together, while they went up to the hospital to see the baby. And I didn't know Mike was a sex offender. And my daughter and I are pretty trusting. And she's like, okay, cool. I trust him. And he was invited to come into the Ronald McDonald House, and he stayed the night. And then the next day, my daughter's husband told him, dude, you got to go. You're making me uncomfortable. I'm not comfortable. I later found out that him and I had pulled the mattress off one of the beds and put it in this big closet to give them privacy and us privacy. And after I passed out, he went out and sat in a chair and stared at my daughter while she slept. And that's why her husband was like, get the fuck out. And so we left for the day. We went to Louisville with one of my childhood friends and did like a little family event because she's known Amanda since she was born. And while we were there, he was like texting and calling because he left a bag of clothes there. And I was like, dude, you have more clothes. I will get them to you when I can. I'm busy. And by the time we were in the car headed back to the Ronald McDonald House, my daughter got a call from the Ronald McDonald House. And that's when they told her, this man's a registered sex offender, because he showed up at the Ronald McDonald House and made such a scene that the police were called.
All right.
Yep.
I want to direct some
Go
of the
back to-
questions to the situation with Natalie. The police had said that people wouldn't come forward that nobody would come forward because of the way that I act. Is that true in your situation?
No, I don't think that's true at all. I think that comment is a way to try to make you the problem when you're not at all.
You know me in person, right?
Yeah, I know you in person.
I'm sure you've listened to a couple of my videos. Am I the same person in person? Do I scream and shout and all that in person?
I've never heard you raise your voice in person. And what I've seen on the videos, so anybody who takes the time, they want to throw the autism label at you and use that as a defamation. Oh, he's autistic, he's mentally ill. No. If you understand anything about autism, there's only so much input a person can take before they become overwhelmed, and it has to come out, period. And you're passionate. Yes, you may get loud in your videos, but there's nobody around that you're screaming directly at. You've never raised your voice around. You know, you were fine around my grandkids. My dog loved you, and my dog doesn't like people. Period. Like, he doesn't like men, and he had no problem with you. Which floor? I know you were. I was floored. I was like, whoa. Okay then.
Yeah, animals love me.
He does love you, and you know, with what you went through, that is not mental illness. That is a reaction to being gaslighted, to being manipulated, to being played, and then all of a sudden you're being attacked and you don't know why. You're very literal, like me. You know, you take things for we don't have the ability to like have those nuances of double meaning. Leave her alone. Sorry. Don't wake her up. Get up on your bed. My dog likes to go and wake up my grandchildren. And I'm like, don't do it. So you wouldn't understand what was going on because your brain is not wired to be able to play those kind of games. Like, you wouldn't be able to do what Natalie did or Alicia did. Alicia. There's no way that you are able to do that.
Yeah, I'm not equipped for bullshit. I've had to try to be dishonest in this to try to get the cops to do their jobs.
Yeah, and most people, it's not a hard and fast rule because there's always exceptions, but the majority of people who have autism, especially on what they once called the Asperger's level, which is no longer used, they just, use a different term. I don't know what it is.
High functioning autism.
Yeah, high functioning autistic. We have a level of honesty in us. We're honest. Period. Like, the ability to be dishonest is very, very hard for an autistic person to do.
Now, I've sent you some stuff on the situation with Natalie to get you informed. After looking at that, obviously it's not very much at all, but is the stuff that I sent you already enough for you to get started on understanding the situation?
Yes. And I kind of have a unique perspective, I guess, a way that I'm from, and I'm not saying what she did was right in any way, shape, or form. But I myself have been victim of sexual abuse through a parental figure. And what she did is she played you and she used you to her own advantage to get something out of it. And when her safety net was like, yeah, we need him gone, she projected onto you what was happening to her. And this is very common with victims. And I'm going to give you my own story. I don't care if people know about it because I don't care. My first husband and I, when we were married and we had our kids, they were little, like 2, 3 years old. He found out what had happened with my stepfather, and he went and confronted my stepfather and told him, you're never going to be around my kids. I don't trust you, like you would do. That's what you do when you love somebody. And my stepfather turned around and began a campaign against him, accusing him of molesting our sons. And me, rather than making the choice most people would think is the logical choice of saying, fuck you, stepdad, I'm going to go with my husband because he's safe, I kept my mouth shut. I became complicit, and I let my stepdad destroy my husband's life. Completely destroy it. He had to leave the town he was born and raised in. Because it was, you get comfortable. I hate to use the word safe and comfortable because it was very toxic and should not have been comfortable. But thinking about leaving my familial unit, no matter how toxic and dysfunctional it was, for this other person, I couldn't do it. So instead, I went back to my abusers, defended them, and allowed them to destroy an innocent man's life. And that is not a unique situation with the victims who are still enmeshed with their abusers and cannot get away or have not been able to get away, or it's very complicated because you could just walk out the door. No, you can't. It's not that easy. And that's what I see with Natalie, is that you offered her safety and comfort, and you were a healthy option for her, and her family saw that as a threat. And I'm sure they started whispering in her ear. They started saying things. And so if she went against them and stood up for you, then her entire quote unquote safety net, or her family unit, she would have to disconnect from, and she could not do that. She was not capable of doing that. So instead of doing what most healthy, functional adults would do and be like, get away from me, you're toxic, I deserve better, she allowed them to harass you, allowed them to slander you, took part in it, and she had no guilt about it at all. Because, and I say this because in the text message where she contacted you on December 15th of 2017, she says, I want to stop fighting. She said she wanted to talk things through. And you don't say that to somebody and then turn around and message one of your boy toys and say, I'm afraid for my life. If I disappear, Sean tied me up in a basement. I'm paraphrasing. You don't do that. That's not normal behavior at all. Like I don't know, for whatever reason, maybe she felt betrayed. I don't know where her mind was. I never knew her. But for some reason, she felt justified in making you hurt like she was hurting, period. And that was her, from my perspective, that was her full intention. Why else would you, in the same day, tell Sean, hey, let's meet. I want to talk things through. I want to stop fighting. And then set up a time and a place to meet the next day, and then turn around and tell your boy toy, he was just, 3 blocks from my house or something like that, and I'm terrified and all of that. Why would you do that? That is not the actions of a mentally well person. She was playing him against you. Not you against him, because you didn't know about, you may have known him, but you didn't know. She wasn't coming to you concerned about him. What is his name, Tim?
Tim Beeson.
Yeah, Tim Beeson. She wasn't
to me.
She was running to him and telling him how she was so afraid of you, but then coming to you and saying, I want to stop fighting. And then when you did show up to meet her and you expressed that it would take a bit, you didn't have the ability just to easily drive up there, and you made a very big effort. Instead of meeting you, and in the messages she says, I had to work, like I caught the very top of it. I'm a really good reader. I can make out half letters and stuff. You know, like I got called in to work 2 hours or something like that. And then the next screenshot, you know, she's like, you said thank you for letting me know. And then she's like, I'm on my way. And that was like at 2:33. And I know this is my brain because I just went through this. I may not remember it in a few days. I'd have to look back. But, and then like, she says, you know, be there ASAP. I'll be there in 30 minutes. And then 30 minutes later, it's, you know, traffic is hell. And you're like, take your time, you know, be safe. And then you get served by a police officer. She never shows up. That's concerning. And I'm going to tell you why this is concerning. Sean, I have been around long enough to have had to get several protection orders and restraining orders from against different people. And when you go in, when I would go in and fill out the protection order stuff for a TRO or TPO, whichever wording they use in that jurisdiction, and then I would, you know, blah, 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 this is why I need this protection order. And then I would go before the judge, and he looks over it and then says, I'm granting you a temporary protection order, but you have to get this person served within this much time. There needs to be proof of service, and then we'll set the permanent restraining order hearing. When you're going through this process, they will tell you, this is a temporary protection order. Do not contact that person. Period. Don't contact them. If they contact you, do not engage. Period. She broke that by contacting you to have you served. That is not what you're supposed to do.
There's also the fact that none of the stuff that I ever sent her to beg her to stop this stuff, none of that happened in Boulder County. The only crimes that were committed in Boulder County, all of them were against me. Like there was nothing in Boulder County. And the other thing is there was nothing in Adams County, which is where she got shot. And that's also apparently where the protection order was from, which I didn't know at the time. I didn't know there was a such thing as a temporary protection order at all.
Yeah, and so like the fact that she contacted you and then the police officer served you, was that I saw that, I was floored. I was like, what the fuck? You're not supposed to do that.
They didn't care about the law through any of this. I can prove they broke the law repeatedly.
Yeah, because when I had a restraining order against my first husband because my stepdad convinced me to, you know, that whole situation. And I started to see the cracks in the facade of my stepdad. Like, you know, it took years, but I had a moment where I contacted he was still my husband, and I was like, did you molest our boys? And he's like, no. And we met up and talked and everything. And then we went out and had a couple of drinks, and I went back to his family house where his brother, like the house he grew up in, and stayed the night. And we woke up at the ass crack of dawn with the police at the door, and it was a horrible scene. But when I went into court, I got yelled at, and they told me the restraining order goes both ways, whether it's temporary or permanent. It goes both ways. So neither one of you were supposed to contact it. And because I broke it, even though I'm the one who's the quote unquote victim, it made my restraining order null and void. It was no longer effective.
Well, I sent you some stuff earlier from when Natalie was claiming that I stalked her to Virginia. In those text messages, how many times does she type to me that she loves me?
A lot.
How about her sister Alicia?
Alicia, she was all for it. She was cool with you. I would have, in your shoes, I would have believed these two girls were my friends. Borderline close enough to be called family. I also kind of get the vibe from the messages that I've read with Natalie that it was kind of like she was fishing and reeling you in. Like she would just give you enough and then reel you in a little bit and then stop. And she was playing with your emotions so that you thought, you know, she was like, maybe I can make him think there's a chance and get him to do these, whatever for me, and then not, back and forth, not ever really saying either, hey, you're just a friend, or hey, I'm really interested in you.
I'm going to send you the
it gave me those weird vibes of like, why are you playing with him?
I'm going to send you the messages between her and I on Facebook. Obviously, we just got started on this stuff tonight. In those messages, you'll get to see that, like, every time that she tries to do that to me, I'm trying to explain to her that, that's not a happening thing. Now, obviously, we aren't going to be able to get into all that tonight, because a lot of that you haven't gotten to see yet. There's a few other questions. Is that with your son? Is that the only time I ever helped you out?
No, not at all. When I left Joseph in Arizona, and then got a ride up to Albuquerque to see that same son who was living in Albuquerque by that time, and this was in the end of February of 2019. You had seen what had gone on because I posted on Facebook that fiasco with Joseph, and you knew that it was coming in, and I didn't have the gear. And if I remember, her name was Angie. But
Angela Kurzmal.
Yep. She, you connected me with her, and I messaged back and forth. And when she showed up at the bus station downtown Denver, and because I had Devin, the blind kid, with me, and my dog, when she showed up, she had so much gear for us that we took what we needed. We gave our old Arizona gear to some people going to Florida, and then looked for how, like, we're walking down with this huge rolling duffel bag thing full of gear. Hey, do you need anything? Hey, do you need anything? And so we were like, because of you, not only did she help us so we didn't freeze to death, because it was a blizzard then. That was the day a blizzard hit.
I was in Hardin, Montana in a blizzard as well.
But she was able to do enough that we were able to help other people as well. And that was huge to me, because at that time when I was trying to get out of Phoenix and I was asking for help on different pages and rides, nobody would help me. People were like, well, you're with him. You go back and forth. Like, no one wanted to help me at all. Nobody. And you were like, I didn't even have to ask you. You were just like, hey, let me help you out. And that really put an impression on me, because not a lot of people are willing to do that without strings attached.
I had to try to rescue from a distance because I couldn't be in Colorado. Too many assaults, too many threats, and the cops. Oh my God.
You saved my toes, that's for sure.
You're welcome.
You saved both Devin and I from freezing to death, and then what we ended up with, that went on when I no longer needed my gear. I gave it to another homeless person. And that's just because I had gotten different other gear down the road, and I was staying with a friend at that time anyways, so that's why I gave him my gear. But I know that if I were to be like, hey, Sean, I have an emergency and I need X amount of money, you wouldn't even ask me what for. You'd just be like, let me see what I could do. Period. What can I do to help you? I remember coming up to you back in 2014 a couple of times, and you would tell me if you couldn't help me. Like, I can't help you with some change for that. I can't even afford coffee. And you were very, like I said, you were one of the few guys on the streets that was trustworthy and reliable. And as far as I know, you're probably the only guy that among that group of guys that didn't have an addiction issue or some shit that you would have to deal with. Like, even Joseph was good and trustworthy to a point, but that came with baggage of his own addiction issues and stuff. And he's schizophrenic. So believe me, spending off and on 7 years knowing him, I know what schizophrenia looks like.
Am I schizophrenic in your opinion?
No, because you have the receipts to back up everything you're saying. Not that it pertains to what we're talking about. There was a night Joseph and I were sleeping along this fence out in Broomfield, this tall fence, like in the shadows. And I'm asleep, and he wakes me up yelling at me. How dare you, man? You be nice. You let her get into our bed. She's scared. She just got raped. Insisting there was a woman at the foot of our bed screaming and crying because she had just been raped. He had beat up the man, and I needed to be more understanding and comforting to her and give her a safe place to sleep. There was nobody there. This was not the only time he did shit like this, huh?
This might seem like a crazy question, but are you a real person or am I imagining you?
I'm pretty real. I'm a very real person. I'm not a figment of anybody's imagination at all. I'm also not one of those, I'm not your typical homeless person, because before being homeless, I came from stability. I came from a somewhat supportive family structure until I decided to confront my stepdad and call him out in front of everybody. And that's when everybody turned on me and put me out on the streets. You know, my own mother. But yeah, I'm not a figment of anybody's imagination. If anybody wants to talk to me, they can hit me up on Facebook.
Now, if you and I had a falling out, if you disappeared, do you think I'd try to find you?
I don't think you would try to find me at all. Oh, wait. If we had a fight falling out and I dipped out, no. I don't think you would pursue that and be like, where are you at? I got to find you. Now, if I just suddenly disappeared and we were on good terms, I know you would try to find me.
Well, me and Natalie were on bad terms when she disappeared. I tried to help find her. When Alicia Bollinger disappeared not once but 3 times, I still tried to help find her. But that's stuff that I haven't gotten to send to you yet.
So let me clarify that. So say we got into an argument and I was like, fine, fuck you, don't talk to me again. No, I don't think you would consistently try to contact me.
I'm not talking about contacting you. I'm talking about finding you. If you and I had a fight and you were on a missing persons poster,
you would definitely look for me. But if it was something where I was like, hey, just don't talk to me, and then you knew I was still okay, I still was in my apartment and everything, but I didn't want contact, no, you would not contact me. But if suddenly my daughter was like, hey, Sean, my mom's missing. I know you guys weren't talking, but my mom's missing. Yes, you would do everything you could to find me.
Now, with everything that I sent you tonight, how long do you think it'd take you to go through just what I sent you tonight?
It's gonna take me probably a couple of hours of just, going through, glancing, not counting the videos. It's just the reading. In the videos, it's a little bit longer. I managed to get through the Natalie texts, like we were talking about, where she asked to meet you and stuff, and then all of the ones with Tim Beeson in about 10 minutes. So it's just really reading through it and stuff.
And even
my biggest obstacle is sometimes I've got these kids and I need to give it my full attention. I can't just like glance at it and then try to focus back on the kids, because I have to give it my full attention.
So it's not because of the way that I act?
Oh, God, no. It's because I have a 5-year-old and a 3.5-year-old grandchildren that I help take care of and raise. And if they see me talking to anybody on the phone, they decide to use my furniture as trampolines. Like they need my attention. And as children should, I should not be looking at other more adult important things while they're running around. And I definitely don't want them to hear the content of the videos, because that's not exactly kid appropriate.
Right.
But it's not because of the way you've acted. Like, even with you having asked me repeatedly since all of this started happening to help me, I didn't not help you because of the way you were acting. I didn't help you because of the condition of my own life. First it was the Terry situation, and then getting away from him, and just, I was so fucked up, traumatized after I left him and found Joseph. I was beating Joseph up on the nightly in my sleep. I wake up and I'm like, what happened to your eye? You got a black eye. And it's like, you punched me. So it was a lot of, I had to dig myself out of where I had been and get myself in a better place. And then even after I got out to Nebraska, I wasn't in a stable enough environment to really commit to looking into this stuff with a clear head. Had nothing to do with the way you acted. Even tonight, when we had that miscommunication, I wasn't going to stop helping you because of it. I was just like, okay, maybe he's frustrated or in a mood, and I need to allow him to feel that, because this is his life. And I'll just take a step back and try to refocus and then continue to start helping him. You know, one thing I think people are missing in all of this is that you are a victim here, and you are going to have emotions and feelings, and PTSD is not a joke at all, and especially when it becomes complex PTSD because the trauma is over and over and over. So if you happen to have an episode or a meltdown, or you need to feel these emotions, or you're overwhelmed, you're entitled to that. That doesn't mean you don't deserve help. That doesn't mean it gives anybody a right to say, look at the way you're acting, you don't deserve help. No, you deserve the help. You deserve justice. There has never been any justice needed for Natalie because she orchestrated all of this. This was her undoing. The true justice is the justice for you because of the way she set you up. And that's horrible. Like,
that's what Dr. Ted Hill was saying too. He said that there was a, what did he call it? I can't remember.
I am horrified. I've seen some really messed up shit. I've been with sociopaths and psychopaths and severe narcissists. I was raised with a malignant narcissist and a predator. But the level that she went to is absolute. Like, to try to frame somebody else for your death, which I don't even think of it as a murder. I think of it as a suicide. She didn't pull the trigger, but she's the one who pushed it. Yes, the guy that killed her has his own accountability. He could have tried to get her help. But I think if he had tried, she just would have found somebody else to do it. But to end your own life and then to set somebody else up to take the fall, that's a level, like, that is so narcissistic. I can't even find the words for it. That's a disturbed individual. That is a very disturbed individual. And yeah. And as I told you, I talked to a resource of mine, and they said the same thing. They actually recommended that looking into finding an ethical true crime kind of person with a good platform that is willing to go over the case in the correct perspective. Because most of them are doing the clickbait thrill of, oh my gosh, this poor innocent girl, and she had this stalker, and then this little twist, and that's not the case. She was not a poor innocent girl. You know, the true crime story is this young woman did these horrible things to this man who was trying to be her friend, and then used him as the scapegoat to take the fall for her murder, or for her death. And that's, and then if you look at the way you reacted when you found out she was missing, and you know, since then, everything that happened, we know you had nothing to do with it at all. I'm concerned about how when they found her body, they didn't release the identity for until January 3rd, something like that. And before the police were able to go through all the check boxes like they have to properly release the identity, but they had notified her family, her dad released that information to a major media outlet, which could affect the outcome of the investigation, and then set up a GoFundMe where he changed the amounts 3 times. It does not take $20,000.
He went on vacation to Boston.
Yeah, and I'm sure he got high. I was floored. Like, he didn't even care that his daughter was dead. He looked for the quickest way to get a monetary gain from it.
Yeah, Rochelle Shelley Campbell and Danica Garner and Rose's own mother let me know a lot of stuff about that. Like, they all told me, well, not Rose, that's Natalie's real mom, but Danica and Shelley, they both told me that I had more reaction to Natalie's death than he did.
Yeah. Because she wasn't a human being to him. She was simply a tool that he used. She was an object for him because he also is, I would say he's a narcissist. And when there's a narcissistic parent, there's a really good chance that the child becomes narcissistic as well. I would have become just like my mother if I don't know, but for, the saying, but for the grace of God, not that I believe in God, but I was able to see that it wasn't okay. I mean, I was in my 30s before I realized, oh my God, I'm becoming just like my mother, and this is not good. And I had to get a lot of intensive therapy. I had to go no contact with my family for a decade. For 10 years, zero contact with my mother and my stepfather, just to be able to be whole in who I am and not fall into that behavior I was raised in. So Natalie was 19 years old. Her frontal lobe wasn't even developed. Let's not even get into how the drugs make it even more stunted. She was not capable of realizing it. She was a narcissist. She learned from her parents and the adults in her life, and that was the way she had learned to survive as a child, and it was still working for her as an adult. She had not yet reached a point where she was going to be forced to change, and unfortunately, she will never reach that point now.
Exactly.
You know?
Another question: when it comes to addictions, like how many addicts, not necessarily percentage wise, but is it a lot of addicts or a little bit of addicts that use religion as a manipulation tool?
Pretty much everyone I've met in active addiction will use religion as a manipulation tool. I have, just to put it on record, I have extensive experience with addiction myself. I've been clean for 2 years now. It's put me through the ringer, but I've learned, it's got me to the point where I know now and I can see how addiction affects people. Addicts are in active addiction. They are very evil. They have no soul. They're just, doesn't mean they don't deserve help. It doesn't mean they're not a human being, but it's
I never turn
serious.
anybody down for a blanket, no matter how drunk they were, no matter how fucked up they were. They always got a blanket.
Yep. And so all my experience on the streets, and running into people with addiction, you are the only person I've met who did not have either an addiction to some drug or an addiction to alcohol, or like some of the people, like I knew one gal, she smoked marijuana, but that's not an addiction. She didn't smoke cigarettes, she didn't drink, she didn't do drugs, but she fucked just about every fucking dude on those streets. Like, she was a busy girl, and that was her addiction. You don't get off the streets. Like, living on the streets is traumatic, period. That is trauma. You don't come out of that without some unscathed. And addicts are very rampant on the streets because we're trying to survive. Like, I admire you. I don't know how you managed to survive without becoming an addict.
I saved lives and made jokes.
Yeah, that's like, I have mad props for you, because as an addict or recovering addict, it's very hard to get clean. And if you have family around you that is not supportive, it's impossible. If she wanted to get clean, all it would take is one of those people in her family to drug in front of her, and she would not be able to say no.
Now, with the stuff that I sent you, obviously you haven't had time to go through it all.
Not all of it.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to belch.
You're fine. Bless you.
Now, you were going to help me with this stuff, what was it, a week and a half ago? 2 weeks ago?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been meaning to do it for a while, but I've been sick and stuff. Yeah.
How much more difficult is it to do it across the way that we're doing it now as opposed to if I was there in person?
Well, because of my, having my grandkids and stuff, I actually think it'd be easier to do it in person if I could, get that chunk of time. We have to do it in bit pieces now because of me helping my daughter with her children, with her health issues. I don't know if you caught it, she has a condition called idiopathic intracranial hypertension, where her pressure in her skull is increased and they haven't been able to control it yet. So she gets migraines and her vision goes in and out, and she could stroke out at any moment. So I've been helping out a lot with the kids. But if
she looks a lot like you. She looks a lot like you.
She is my mini me. That's what we always said. My daughter is my mini me. You should see my other daughter. She looks just like us too. because I have 2 daughters too. But so I would have been able to get through this a lot quicker. Because you came to me, like we finally were able to meet and really talk about it right before Thanksgiving. And then I had to have my gallbladder out on the 29th, and it was very last minute sudden. Like, it's been months coming, but they finally got the results of all the tests, and they were like, you got to get that out because it's not working. And so that was the 29th of November. And then I thought about 2 weeks would be fine, but for some reason the top incision was not healing quickly. And so it actually took me a month before I was able to get up and move and do a lot on my own and start to feel better. I got strep throat on Christmas morning. And then when Amanda and the kids came out back before that storm hit right at New Year's Eve, they had COVID. So I had to take care of the kids. And she's still sick with it. And like this week, it's been a little more like I haven't been on top of it. I'm having a diverticulitis flare up. Well, I just had surgery, so my whole body's freaking out. But I've been wanting to help you a lot more. So that's dropping the ball on my part. I wish that I could just like take a week and get through all of this because there's a lot of information. There's a lot. Huh?
I want to send you every single message between Natalie and I that was on our Facebook Messenger as well.
Please do. Now, my resource I talked to, they recommended that to get the information and break it down chronologically. To, file it chronologically.
How easy is that to do when you're constantly moving?
You can't do that if you're homeless, period. Nope. You can't. And if you don't have a stable environment, the only reason I'm able to do is I have an apartment. My housing is secure. I have a friend who lets me use her Wi-Fi here in the building. I'm able to, the kids are usually back at home by 7:30, after my daughter gets off work. I'm able to do that because I have the stability, and you can't do that if you're constantly moving. I'm surprised you managed to keep a hold of everything that you have.
Yeah, most of it a lot of it got stolen. A whole lot of it. The police kept on stealing it. I'd have a department erase stuff on other departments. I mean, they kept on getting my evidence in their hands, but it was never allowed in court. I was never allowed to show it. I mean, it's not been easy.
No.
The messages between me and Natalie and me and Tim Beeson, I'm going to send you that too. That's the thing is like Tim Beeson was only one of a great many people who were stalking me and harassing me on the internet and harassing me in real life and telling me they were going to come up and kill me and kill my family and things like that. And I'm going to be sending that to you tonight as well.
Yep. I would like to have, I'm willing to go through all the evidence that you have and you can send to me and make sure that it's in a secure place. So like I said, I have the resources that when all of this evidence is able to be put into an organized area, like I've told you, I want to get it on like a terabyte drive. I have the ability to make sure that it is in safekeeping, not in my possession. So you could try to come kill me for it. You ain't going to get it. You ain't going to find it. And that person's willing to hold it, and they don't know the details, but they know. I told them if I get this done, they said, I will hold it, and if you end up dead, I will make sure that it is blown up. So,
did you see the picture I sent you of the paperwork that I have?
Do you remember I'm looking at my email right now.
I think I sent it to you in text message, but I'm not for certain. Let me see.
Let's see.
Yeah, it's in Facebook Messenger.
Oh, okay, give me a moment so I was looking through my text. So yeah, give me a moment to look in my Facebook Messenger.
If you scroll up to the part where I was telling you about Sword and Scale.
Yeah, hold on real quick.
Yes, ma'am.
Come on. No, I can make that bigger, right? No. I'm on the computer Facebook and I'm not that used to it yet. How do you make it bigger?
Click on it.
Okay.
Left
oh,
click.
like.
I just tried it, but there's a comment that apparently I didn't press enter on. I'm in the Real Justice for Natalie Bollinger group, no drama.
Okay.
I'm going to send you a couple of conversations with the lady who used to have this. She'll tell you about some of the predators that I had to deal with, like Kara Johnson Miles.
Mm-hmm.
I already sent you the stuff where she claims that she's a autism advocate. I mean, they played that shit to the max. When she got busted, I also sent the screenshots from Shannon Alvarado that she sent me. That Kara Johnson Miles lady was pretending to be my friend, but the Shannon Alvarado exposed her as a liar, and that's when Shelly, who was claiming that she was going to help me, the one who the pocket dial happened. I mean, that's all real stuff. Now, what I'd like to do is in a day or two, if you're able to, after you've been able to go through that stuff, it might take longer than that. I hope not, though. Would you be able to have another interview and explain the evidence that you've seen? And
yep, I would be more than willing to do that. We could set that up. And I did see that picture of the paperwork. That's a lot of paperwork. I also saw the video that you had with that said, finally held in person, and that's a lot of paperwork.
Yeah, my little sister had her friend Ed come over, and he's schizoaffective. He didn't let me know that until I'd already let him mess with my computers.
Oh.
He erased an entire computer worth of evidence.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but I don't hate him. He's been my friend for a lot of years.
Yeah.
He never meant any wrong.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I told my sister he was schizoaffective, and she didn't believe me. She said he's autistic like you. He's just misunderstood. And then while he was here, he told me that he was schizoaffective. He was also all right as a survivor of that violence and things of that nature. How scary is it to hear somebody talking about violence, talking about killing people and stuff like that?
And killing people?
Yeah.
That disturbs me a lot when people are threatening to kill other people. That disturbs me a lot because, yeah, you don't know if somebody means it or not. And from the ones I have looked at where they're threatening to kill you, that's fucking scary. You never take that lightly. And, just from what I like TikTok. And from what I have seen, some creators like to expose racists and white supremacists, and then those people are retaliating. And they have involved the FBI and gotten people charged with like federal crimes because they have screenshots or screen recordings of these people saying, "I'm going to kill you." Like somebody saying, "I'm going to kill you," and you have that documented, that is a valid threat. And that is taken seriously, and that should be pursued in criminal charge. It's a threat. It's not something you just say.
In the comments and stuff that you've looked at so far, how many threats have you seen towards me?
Oh, just from what little bit I've seen, like, so the 10 Beeson zip, there were, I don't even know, there was like 5, 6. Scrolling through the comments, there's a lot. Like, there's even ones that are still being posted within the last couple of months. People are going on, they're still accusing you, saying, it's your fault she killed herself, you drove her to it, threatening you. And that's scary. If somebody was threatening my life, I would be terrified. I've been there where somebody was threatening the lives of my friends and family, and that's how Terry kept me under control, because I didn't take it lightly. People are like, "Oh no, he didn't mean that." I don't know if he meant that or not. So how do I know? That's not something you joke about. It's a very serious thing, and I would be scared shitless if I was getting those messages. Especially like right when Natalie disappeared and then her body was found, but they hadn't figured out what really had happened yet. You're getting these messages of people saying, you better stay indoors, I'm going to hunt you down and kill you. What did I do? What is going on? This is not me. I'm not a part of this, and nobody wants to listen to you.
I went to a lot of people for help before she was killed. You know, they blew me off with them pretty words, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what you're taught, you know. Obviously you've got some experience in trauma response, and so do I. Are those things you're supposed to say to somebody?
Absolutely not. If somebody is going through something, it is not my place to say get over it, it's in the past at all. Like, example,
Especially
my
if
children.
It's still going on.
Yeah, my children, there are times, because there were issues, there were things I did when they were children that traumatized them, and they will bring it up still to this day. My daughter, will share, it was really hard to grow up knowing my mother was an addict and the drugs consumed her life, and she wasn't able to be there for me. I cannot look at my daughter and say, honey, that's been a long time ago, and I've been clean and sober. You need to let it go.
Well, I got another question for you.
Ever. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to send you a whole bunch of evidence, and, I want to get it sent to you decently as a timeline. But, the fact is, a lot of people assume that just because they found her killer that it's all over. I still have people doing these things to me to this day. Every time Anna Solves or Rob Gavigan or someone like that makes a new video, I get a new influx of people that get a hold of me to threaten to kill me, and you psycho and you sicko and you this and you that. But the thing is, like, the things that they're accusing me of doing, obviously I've already, sent you the evidence that was BS, but there's also a lot more to it.
That video from Anna Solves pissed me off too. It pissed me off because, first of all, she used the whole stalker clickbait bullshit when the story is not about you being a stalker at all, because you were not a stalker. And the way she spun the homeless looking dude and the homeless dude, and no, I don't know if I sent you what I posted as a response on that video, but
it was very long and you were very pissed. I actually went to the video and read it.
Yeah, but I wasn't appropriately pissed. I was pissed though, because that's not okay. I've been homeless. I've suffered from homelessness. You don't just look at somebody and be like, oh, because they look a certain way, they are a certain way.
How many times when you were homeless did you hear people walk by with their kids and say things like, stay away from those people, or he looks like a chimo, or he looks like a rapist?
Dude, there was a time Joseph and I were standing on a corner, and this car drove by screaming. I couldn't even hear what they said, and they threw a glass bottle full of urine at us, and it landed on the ground in front. Like, he's quick. You know how quick Joseph is. And he moved and blocked it from me, and he got drenched in somebody's fucking piss.
So there's a lot of hatred.
Oh, a lot of hatred. And on a side note,
go ahead.
All of the hatred I got was from white people. Just gonna say.
Yeah.
All of it was from white people. I never once had a person, black, brown, indigenous, minority, and immigrant person. Never once did one of them ever yell at us, scream at us, or harass us, or assault us. Not once. It was always the white people. And Joseph's been maced more than once in the face while flying a sign. I was buffered from a lot of that because he was there to be that buffer. He held the sign and stuff.
A road dog.
Huh?
A road dog.
He was my road dog, yes, and my protector. Yeah, the amount of assault homeless people get just because of the situation there, and I felt like a fucking torn up, low life piece of trash. I did not feel like I had any worth. I used to cry and pray I would not wake up in the morning. I would be literally in the bushes in a tree, like under a tree, so I'm not sane and nobody will find me, and just be praying to God I could not wake up. I did not want to live because the way the world made me feel as a homeless person.
I do want to ask about someone we both know. right before Natalie was killed, I made a post that someone that I knew in Boulder was probably going to freeze to death on Christmas, and then Ben Harvey died.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a woman named Mariah Johnson who had gotten a hold of me and became friends with me.
Yep.
And then 3 days later, that's when Natalie Bollinger disappeared. She typed some hateful stuff at me and blocked me and all that, and then started a campaign in Boulder about hating me and, stuff like that. But later on, when they found her killer, Mariah had gotten back a hold of me and apologized, which of course
Mm-hmm.
means absolutely the world. So I friended her again. Um, did you know Ben Harvey?
I did not know him, but I knew of him.
Now there was a situation where me and Mariah, where she had out of nowhere sent me a bunch of mean texts and stuff like that, and blocked me.
Mm-hmm.
And you had been explaining that it was over a situation with you. Is that correct?
Yes, that woman. Her and I became connected when Wings. We know Wings, right?
Yes, ma'am. She was
Okay,
walking
so
around with a dead baby for 2 days.
okay, so when Wings was pregnant with that dead baby, and it was not 2 days, it was 5 days. Well, when Wings first became pregnant, I was living in my apartment in Denver, and I reached out to her because I did not know her that well. I only knew her somewhat. We were on somewhat friendly terms, and became her support. I was supposed to be her birth partner, and I was there with her when she went through all of her natural childbirth classes. She flipped shit a month before she was supposed to have Azure, and we all know what happened with carrying the dead baby around. But she had also been in touch with Mariah, and as far as I know, they're still friends. So then Mariah and I were friends because of Wings. Like, we were both trying to help Wings, and then the whole Azure died and the dead baby thing, and then Wings lost her shit, and then she got ran out of my camp that I had outside of Rainbow Lakes in 2017 in the summer because of her a whole nother did. And then so Mariah and I really weren't talking anymore because I was like, dude, that's Wings' friend. I can't be in her life, but maybe this woman could help her. That's my belief. We may not jive, but maybe somebody else will jive with you. Go on and good luck. And then Mariah reached out to me, and it was very strange, very, very strange, because I had posted up on Facebook that Joseph and I were going to be in Longmont. She had an apartment. She's like, come take showers. I'll do your laundry, all of that. And
I gave
so
Tink her nickname.
Huh?
I gave Tink her nickname.
Did you really?
Some of the stuff I'm going to send you, it's messages between me and Tinkerbell, yeah.
Oh, good. So I can't wait to see. During the, I had not in person met Mariah before the beginning of 2019 when I messaged you, and it said Marissa, actually, which is Tinkerbell's name, but I think I was talking about Mariah in the Facebook message. But it was right before I was getting ready to see them in Longmont, because that's when Joseph and I were there. It was the beginning of 2019. And the minute I met Mariah, the moment Joseph was not around, she was all over me. I'm in love with you. I don't have the messages anymore on my phone. Probably in Facebook I do. Long messages about the future with me, and she's going to take me traveling, and she can't wait until her and I can be co-grandmas to my grandchildren. Talk about a creep factor, dude. I just met you, and you want to insert yourself into my children and my grandchildren? That's not okay. And so I think it was right about this time that she had, again, been talking to you and stuff. Well, she wanted me to break up with Joseph, and literally I had gone to her house to do showers, and Joseph and I couldn't go together because we had a tent up in a snowstorm, so he stayed back with our tent and our gear and the dog.
You gotta make sure your stuff don't get stolen.
Yeah, and so he went one day and then came back, and then I went the next day. And when I went there, the first time, her, Marissa, Tinkerbell, and Mariah at Tinkerbell and Cowboy's apartment cornered me, and they told me, don't go back. Don't go back. You stay here. Fuck him. Let him keep all the shit. Fuck the dog. Let him keep the dog. And I kept telling them, no, I will not do that. That is not the right thing to do. Well, you know it's not going to work out with him. What happens, by this time I knew I was coming to Nebraska with my daughter. What happens when you get there and it doesn't work out? And I told them, then it doesn't work out. I knew it wasn't going to work out. I could see where it was leading, but it wasn't my place to jump the gun and be like, I see where this is going. We're done. I had to let it play out with Joseph properly. Sometimes you have to do that. And so I refused to, and they just, Marissa, Tinkerbell turned nasty towards me, and she threatened my dog. She threatened to kill my dog. And then that's when I was like, I'm done. I won't talk to her. So I still talking to Mariah. And then there was another time a few days later that I went again to her apartment to do some laundry, shower, and she put me in a very awkward and uncomfortable position. And basically, my book, it is rape, even though I was not like, no. After being sexually abused so much, sometimes your first instinct is not to fight back, it's to shut the fuck up and get it over with and get out of there. That's the instinct. Yeah. And so, one time she showed up where I was flying a sign and Joseph was back at camp, and she sees me and she came up and grabbed my face and just plants this big tongue kiss on me that I did not ask for. And I'm trying to be like nice to her, and yes, she's offering help that we need, and I was in a really bad spot. And so her and I were still on friendly terms. Joseph and I came out to Nebraska, and we couldn't fit everything we had into my daughter's car. So we left stuff at Mariah. She said, no problem. Joseph packed it in one of the two closets in the master bedroom. It was all nice and neat, sealed up. Nobody, so if we knew if somebody got into it. And so we came out here. That was March 13th of 2020 that we arrived in Nebraska. He ended up having to go back to Colorado, I believe in May, because things weren't working out. And he also needed to get a few things. So he went to Mariah's, got I'm thinking his trailer was, his bicycle trailer, because we couldn't bring the trailers. Mine was being stored at the bike shop. So he got his bicycle trailer and the gear we needed, and he discovered that this pouch of change we had stashed for emergency was like $15 was gone. Our 2 propane tanks were gone, and our stuff had been gone through, and he had a 64 gigabyte memory card in his phone, and the phone was there, but the memory card was gone. And so I confronted her through messaging. I was like, what the fuck? Where's our shit? And she told me, I can't believe you'll throw my friendship with you away for a homeless bum and a bunch of crap that doesn't mean anything. And that's when, we exchanged words. She ended up pulling my daughter into it, sent my daughter screenshot after screenshot of nasty shit she said to my daughter about me. Of course, my daughter's like, bitch, shut the fuck up. I'm blocking you. That's my mom. I don't give a fuck. My daughter doesn't know my secrets. She does. And so that's when I quit talking to Mariah, because I was fed up.
And that was when she was sending me those messed up messages too.
That's when that's when she turned on you. And one of the things she said is, you fucked up. I'm getting ready to get $36,000 or $3,600 from the stimulus, she was committing massive welfare fraud, massive. But, she was completely abusive, and it's so off base, because she really thought by saying she had money and she could take care of me, that's what was important to me, and I would want to continue any form of a relationship with her. And, that was not true. And as a side note, since then, because I had that profile blocked, I blocked her ass. Friend requested me again on a different profile, and I responded, hey, were you drunk when you sent this to me? Because our friendship ended on a note that's not salvageable. This is not happening. She never responded. I didn't think anything of it. And then just recently, I think it was after you came and saw me in November, I told you she got a hold of me again. I'm so sorry. I want to be friends. Like, I have the screenshots about begging to fix our relationship, and she wanted to make things right. I told her no. Like, I called her, I laid it out for her. No, absolutely not. Not the kind of person you are. You need help. Which she then turned on me and said some nasty ass untrue shit. She's a very unlikable, disturbed person. She has 4 kids. Her own children will tell her, shut the fuck up, bitch. I hate you. I can't stand you. Get out of my life. And then turn around and say, give me your money. Like, it's the most fucked up, dysfunctional family. I couldn't believe it. Joseph and I were like, we gotta go. Man, hurry up and get here. Because she's a very negative, nasty person that will turn on you in an instant if you do not give her what she wants. And, you know, anything she had to say about you, it's not true. She just runs her fucking mouth when people don't give her her way. You know, personally, I know that because she did it to me. And, of course, it didn't damage me because my people know. They're like, what the fuck is wrong with you, bitch? Leave Mandy alone. Get the fuck. Even now when she did the last one and I posted up the screenshots on Facebook, you remember little Ellie, well, young Ellie? She was a minor, but she was a housie. Like, she was one of the rich kids from downtown Boulder, but she'd hang out with the homeless people on Pearl Street and stuff. She wasn't into the drugs. But her and I have stayed friends, and she called me. She's like, Mama Mandy, I just want you to know, don't worry about that bitch.
Could you explain why we ran off the kids? Not necessarily you. I'm not accusing you of running kids off, but
if there was a child under the age of 18 trying to come up, at least from my perspective, like, hey, can I smoke some weed with you? Hey, I've got some weed to smoke with you. There's some cigarettes. No, because that put me at a legal liability. That could bring some very bad shit onto me. And it could bring bad attention and heat onto all of us homeless people. Children are off limits. If there was there was one girl, she was 14 and she went by Bubbles, but she had everybody convinced she was older, and she wasn't. And I knew she wasn't. I would tell her, you need to go. You cannot be here with us. We are doing adult things. You are not an adult. You need to go. Now, if there was a situation,
just the assumption is enough to come and harm you and harm the whole homeless community.
Yeah, it's not safe at all. At all. Like, I know there were times when some of the younger, underage kids were out and about, and it was like, no, you need to go to the source. I could contact the police or contact who needed to be to get them where they needed to go, because I was on, at that time, good terms. I was trusted. I remember Elizabeth.
I want to stop you just for a moment. Most of the kids that went to the source, they complained about how they went up there for help and resources, and those people basically spent a lot of time trying to convince them that they needed to stay there full time, and there was a couple of creepers there that worked there that they weren't comfortable with, that Boulder wouldn't do anything about. Do you know any of those people that might be willing to speak up about? Because I never went to the source. I was too old by the time I moved there.
Well, yeah, I only knew really knew. I don't think Ellie ever went to the source. I could talk to her. But the only 2 girls that I knew that were really around the source a lot was Emily, who had been with Emery, and her and I are definitely not on terms. And then
Emery was
the other
Wings' child's dad.
Huh?
Emery was Wings' child's dad.
No, Emery was not. Cinderblock was the father of both the dead baby, and now she has another baby by him. That was Cinderblock's baby. Yeah. And I know that for a fact because she showed me pictures of Azure, the one that died. Because she had pictures of him. It was Cinderblock's kid, 100%. I mean, Wings and Emery had been together, but they never had a baby together. And then, I don't know what happened. Batshit Wings shit. Emery and her broke up. And then he got with Emily. And she would go by Emily Rose. I can't remember what her last name was, but she was young. Her and this girl, Kat, hung around. It's not Kat Chang. It was another Kat. And Kat's dead, unfortunately, so she's not able to speak. Emily.
It's Catherine.
Catherine Louise, yeah.
Yeah, when she looked a lot like that lady from Resident Evil.
Yes.
She was, I still her
Huh?
and you remember Alexis Valentine?
Yeah. Her and I knew Alexis well.
I gave up my seat that night. I was in the Suburban with them, and she wanted to go. She wanted to go to Netherland, and I got out of the vehicle and let her in. The next day, I found out she was dead.
Yeah.
And I talked to her brother. His name is Ventus. He said that the bruising on her wasn't from being ejected from the vehicle. He said that they had beaten her up and put her in the vehicle and then staged an accident.
That's what I heard. And the guy that was driving actually went to jail or prison. He was charged and tried for it. That much I know. Shit's really bad. Like, if people could really see the subculture that we've lived through with living on the streets, most people can't survive that. They can't. Because it is like, it's the rawest form of human survival today.
How do most people deal with homelessness? What?
Drugs and alcohol, really? Like, that's really the way they deal with it. Like, the guy
even if
that
they
ran
start off sober, like I've had so many friends that ended up, they started off and they're like, yeah, I'm going to get up and out. I'm not one of you people. I'm not one of you people. And 6 months down the road, there they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's because first of all, you become homeless. So this was my experience. I became homeless. And the first month I was truly homeless on the streets, not couch hopping and stuff. I was in Colorado Springs because that's where I lived. And my brother and I had reconnected. Like, he'd been in jail for like 8 months, so gotten out, found me on Facebook. And he said, sis, get up to Boulder. I'm homeless. I'd rather you be homeless with me up here than on your own down there. I need to protect you. That's how I ended up in Boulder, is because my brother was up there homeless. And so I remember going to the shelter and thinking I could do this, until I went to take a shower and a woman had removed her tampon and all of her period tissue was in the drain and nobody would clean it at all. And I'm like, dude, I can't stay here. This is nasty. This is filthy. Women were robbing each other in the night. A shelter was not safe. Boho was only an option if you didn't have the gear to survive outside. But you wake up in the morning.
They got rid of boho.
Yeah, they did. You wake up in the morning. Well, if you're in the shelter or in the warming center, they wake you up and they're like, out by 6, sorry, or out by 7, sorry. It's still dark. It's still cold. And you have nowhere to go at all. Nowhere. If you try to go to the bus station downtown, they kick you out. So you're trying to find somewhere, trying to stay warm, trying to survive, trying to find breakfast, trying to wait till lunch. And the amount of stress that causes in the emotions, the majority of people turn to the drugs and alcohol to numb the feelings. I don't have a lot of experience with alcoholism on the streets. I was not a big, in that phase of my life by the time I hit the streets. But I can't sleep tonight. I'm cold. I need to keep moving. I'm going to do some meth. I will sleep in the daytime in the park with my shoes on so I don't get a camping ticket, and I'm not going to get assaulted. There were so many times I stayed up all night long running around with Buddha Chris. He was a good guy. He's one of the guys I ran around with.
Is that the one with the red beard?
Yes.
I got some horror stories about him. I ended up with a charge because he sold me a computer. He claimed that it was he had a guy staying with him, and the guy didn't pay his rent, so the guy had given him the computer to pay the rent. So he sold me that computer.
Because this guy never had a place to live. He was always homeless.
Not the same guy then.
No, not the same guy. But like, do you remember Tweaker Larry that looks like Popeye?
No.
Okay. He's another one. He never tried anything with me. He kept an eye on me, but I would have to stay up all night. And the only way to do that, and to stay warm, because methamphetamine raises your blood and your temperature, was getting high and staying awake all night. And then finally, once, not even at daybreak, you'd have to wait a while. You'd get up, stay awake, and then go to sleep during the day. I spent most of 2014 in the late summer after Mike assaulted me, sleeping on Pearl Street by the minor statue right in front of the building in the park, where everybody could see me, because at night I was constantly on the move.
When you say a minor statue, you don't mean a child. You mean the minor over on the courthouse lawn, like a stone miner or a gold miner.
The guy who is a pickaxe miner, not a small child, a young child. And that was the reality of being homeless. It took me, so the first time I was homeless for 15 months. And then I got into the Fort Lyon program, and I went there. And I was there for 13 months, and then I got an apartment through housing for 13 months, and then ended up homeless.
How many?
And
I wanted to stop and ask you, how many of the homeless services were you eligible for, but Joseph wasn't?
Well, when I was homeless, the first Lyon, everything. I felt like I was a princess, I was taken care of. Joseph was not eligible for those. There were times I would have to talk to the guys at the door of Boho, especially when Joseph and I first started going. We weren't even a couple for a while when he first started camping with me to keep me safe, and it'd get too cold. And they were like, why is he here? Because his previous lady, Suzanne, all those issues. And I would tell them, like, he's with me, he's keeping me safe. And they're like, okay, we're going to let him in. Because he didn't stay in the Boho shelters, ever. And it wasn't until I became homeless in 2017 that I really learned, like, what it meant to sleep on the streets, to sleep behind a dumpster, to eat out of a dumpster, to wait until KFC threw their food away for the night.
Yeah, that's why COVID doesn't kill you. Right. You get an immunity from eating out of dumpster slime.
You sure do. I've been sicker since I've been here in the last almost 2 years than I have the entire time I was ever on the streets, ever. It's very, very hard to survive on the streets and feel safety. Like, it took a lot of work to get to the comfort level I got with Joseph and I got to. And it still wasn't easy. I mean, we found places we could camp and we were safe and out of the way, but we were each on a bicycle with a bicycle trailer. Mine was a minimum of 85 to 100 pounds. He had even more gear, and we would have to bicycle 1 mile, 2 miles, 3 miles into open space to be that far out of the way. That's not an option for most people. It's a lot of hard work. Or we were in places where the police knew us and they knew we were picking up trash and they looked the other way. That's not an option for most people. I'm an anomaly. I've never gotten a homeless crime ticket, never a trespassing ticket, a camping ticket, never, not once. And that is a very rare thing for anybody who's been spent time on the streets.
Yep. How nice are the cops in Boulder to the homeless?
They're fucking horrible. The only time I was treated decently by the police is when the case happened with Mike, because they had an agenda for this sex offender, which I understand. But otherwise, no, they were not nice at all. At all. The only time they were decent is like when Joseph and I were together. They one time found us past where the Silver Saddle Motel had been. We were like along the bike path sort of back. And we had a tarp over our two carts. It was snowing. But the cops would come aggressive until they saw him. And then they would back down. But Joseph has a very long history with the Boulder PD.
He does. He fucked them up a few times.
Yeah, they're not allowed to mess with him. Like, he said that he has a restraining order against him. They can't fuck with him because of all the shit that went down.
Yeah.
And I've never seen them, like, the minute they saw his name, they were like, okay, you have a good day. Bye. See you at the cat. Didn't fuck with him at all. Not at all. And he had a very good relationship with the police in Westminster because of Daddy Bruce Jr., not the senior. But he had worked off and on over the course of over 20 years with Daddy Bruce Jr. up in Boulder. And when Daddy Bruce Jr. retired, he ended up in Westminster. And so the police knew who we were and didn't fuck with us, but that's because of Joseph. Any other time, they're fucking dicks.
Do you remember when he lived behind the barbecue place over by Naropa?
That was Daddy Bruce's barbecue.
Yep.
I mean, it was closed by the time I got to Boulder, but he had pointed that all out to me. And I met Daddy Bruce Jr. when right after Joseph and I reconnected at the end of 18. He had just gotten out of jail, and so we went over to Daddy Bruce's to get some stuff of his because that's where he had been living when he went to jail. And I sat down and spent a couple of hours with Daddy Bruce Jr. and listened to his stories. And that man loved Joseph than he loved any of his own children. He adored Joseph, which is why he was able to live behind the barbecue.
Now Joseph's not. Well, I guess you found him attractive, but he's not necessarily the most physically attractive guy.
I never found him physically attractive. I know that sounds weird. Like, I was never like, oh, he's physically attractive. My attraction to him was on a different level. Like, so.
Safety?
The first time I ever met Joseph, my hustle at that time is, I would watch people's gear and they'd kick me down cigarettes and weed. And I had some extra weed and I was running around and asking the people I knew, finding the signs on the corner, how are you doing? And I came across big fat stinky Ron, and he was flying a sign with Joseph. First time I ever saw him. And the minute my eyes locked with Joseph, I knew right then and there that we were meant to be together. I couldn't act on it, but him and I knew that moment. Like, I know it sounds weird. He's like the love of my life, but I can't be with him because of his own path and demons. So it was really just, his energy was calming and he was understanding and he listened to me and he was a safe, protective person to be around. And he was that way when I went to Fort Lyon. We were still together and we ended up breaking up because he was drunk all the time and I was just heading in a different path. And I was like, you're homeless on the streets and you're drunk. I'm getting ready to get an apartment. I wouldn't be able to have you come over. I need to go my own way. And he was understanding. He was like, go your own way. I love you. It wasn't a fight. We just parted ways. And then it was just by the universe's intervention, we happened to run into each other. I hadn't even thought about him in a while. And the minute we ran into each other, like when he found me on the corner with Terry, literally the minute I looked up and saw him, I heard Mel Gibson in my head scream freedom. I am not kidding you. I heard freedom. I was like, I have a way out and away from Terry because I knew Joseph would keep him away from me, and he did. He made sure that man never came near me again. And but my attraction to him was on a more soul level. I've never been one to be attracted to somebody for their aesthetic look, like if they look a certain way. Like my brother used to say, sis, you're a beautiful woman. Why are you ugly? Why are you always with the ugly people? That's what he would tell me. And I would tell him, ugly people need love too. And I know, right? Ugly people do need love. And I didn't see these people as ugly. My ex-wives are far from pretty. One of them is always mistaken as a man. Like, it was never about the way they looked. It was about their soul and, you know, who they were as a person. I don't fall in love with physical features at all. It's not me.
Well, obviously, I am friends with, or have been friends before Natalie died, with a lot of people from the LGBT community. How active are the homeless in protecting the LGBT community?
That's kind of split because, I mean, I never got any shit, but I was mostly with men by that time. Like Princess DJ Wow, the majority of the homeless community would have her back, but then there was another gal on the street. She was a transgendered woman, and I think her name was Adrian.
Adrian,
and
yep.
People did not tolerate her at all. At all.
Well,
and I mean, I never knew her.
DJ Wow was connected with Daniel Kitlett's death. He's also the one who gave me, when Natalie came and rescued me, the Boulder police had made my life so much hell after I hurt my back, and all of my friends abandoned me, and I couldn't function. I couldn't walk a block. My backpack was too heavy. DJ Wow sold me 37 Vicodin, and I was going to go into the bathroom in Starbucks, and I was going to swallow them all, and that's when Natalie Bollinger rescued me.
Yeah, so, DJ is a questionable character, that's for sure.
I was informed of one other homeless person that had a similar situation with DJ Wow, where, like with Danny, his pants were around his knees, his pockets were outturned, like they were trying to see if he stashed his dope underneath his nutsack, but he'd just gotten out of rehab, like he was not ready for that. And there was another guy who had let me know DJ Wow was involved in another similar situation, pants around their knees, pockets outturned. So,
well, I had a young man who told me that DJ Wow had a reputation among the younger males that were in the scene of drugs and drinking of getting these guys really fucked up and taking advantage of them. Like, I never worried about my safety with DJ because I'm a female and DJ's not into females, you know, but I knew that DJ Wow was far from safe for other males to be around. Like, there's shit. I don't have hard proof. I can only say what I've been told, and the one person who told me in confidentiality.
Yep, I get that. Now there's I don't know. I was really wanting to talk about the situation with Natalie. Obviously, there's a lot of evidence that I sent you that you haven't been able to go through quite yet, and also a lot of the stuff that you've talked about. This is all stuff that I talk about. You know, this is things that I say, and people call me a liar and say I'm making it up, and you know, they've pretended that almost everybody that I've spoken about, you know, including you, they're telling me that you're figments of my imagination, that I'm making it up, that I'm delusional, and you know, you pretty much verified that's all bullshit. You know, you do exist.
I do exist, and I have a privilege. I'm very aware of the privileges I have as a white woman. In that,
I've noticed all your work with missing and murdered Indigenous women. You post up more of that than I do, and I post up quite a bit.
Yeah, I do. My oldest son, Ryan, the one that went missing, his girlfriend is Lakota. So it's become very much it's become on my radar. Like, I didn't know about it until I started posting about it, and I was absolutely floored. I follow content creators on TikTok that are Indigenous, and I cannot keep up with the number of missing girls that are popping up, and missing boys, and missing children, and missing people.
6 people who are Native Americans have gone missing from the Four Corners area just since the 10th, and that's insane. When I was trying to help you out, like I said, I was in a blizzard in Hardin, Montana, and you know, that's obviously the epicenter of all of this. There's hundreds of people missing from that area. The news didn't pick it up until after the disappearance of Selena Not Afraid, and now they've forgotten it again.
Well, something that I picked up with some of these creators that are activists and stuff, and they're pretty large, is that it is very well known on the reservations to avoid the man camps. You know what man camps are? It's where the oil field workers go. So when you work in the oil field, you go out for 14 days, you come home for 7. You go out for 14 days, you come home for 7. And when you go out, there's these camps and these men. They're also for the pipelines. That's another industry that uses these man camps. But it is well known that the man camps, they go and they take the indigenous women. They just take them. And the police look the other way, and they don't always murder them. And not every woman who's gone, indigenous woman who's gone missing or murdered has been a victim, but a lot of the ones who can't be found, they get them and they are shipped out of the country.
And it all goes through Denver, and all the money comes from Boulder.
Yep. Big epicenter. Big, huge epicenter. And, you can't find a missing person, even by chance. They don't keep them around the United States. They get rid of them. They take them out of the country because, you got buyers. Take them to the Middle East. Take them somewhere else. Just like a lot of the trafficking victims here in the United States, you'll find like a lot of them aren't from the United States. They're taken from other countries and brought here.
Paraguay, Uruguay, basically they come up through Mexico and they're trafficked through Mexico. They go up through Amarillo and San Antonio, up through Denver. From Denver, they get shipped to St. Louis. In that direction, they get sent up the I-90 pipeline, which is, oh my God, like that's a horrible area, especially if you're a woman, especially if you're Native. And that goes all the way up to Hardin, Montana, all the way up to Billings, Montana. And then there's also the ones that they take them from Denver and they go to Yuma and they go to Sacramento, and like Denver is the hub for everything. And then they've got the hot spots where they got to trade these girls out every 3 to 6 weeks because they don't want to get caught. As soon as somebody recognizes them, or there's a possibility of recognizing them, it's time to trade out with another pimp. Desiree, I rescued her twice from after Natalie died. I rescued her twice from a trap house in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and I have multiple calls on my YouTube channel where I was calling those guys. They never called me back. I tried talking to them in person, and I was blown off. Like, the guy's name is Kevin McGregor. And he lives literally right across the street from the Camilla shelter, right next to the Holiday Inn. I know the area. I know the house. I know the shelter. I know that whole area. Like, Desiree, oh my God, I know. She ended up stealing my stuff the second time. I think it was the first time I rescued her. She stole all my stuff, said that she was tasered, and that he had basically done a bunch of stuff. But, the reality of the situation is she was in that bad situation, but she was also addicted to meth, and there was none at my apartment.
Yeah. Now, when I was in the deepest throes of my addiction, and it was a big wake-up call for me, near friend I've known since childhood. We've known each other forever. She's in addiction. I was around her. I would steal from her, and she would steal from me. We're not supposed to be stealing from each other. We're each other's sisters. That's how well we know each other. Like, she's my sister. And I would steal the dope from her, and she would steal the dope from me. And that was a wake-up call, because as a tweaker, I was that one that I would steal your dope and help you look for it.
Right? And that's the joke, isn't it? What's the difference between
it's a joke, but
a cokehead and a
joke.
tweaker? A cokehead will steal your shit. A tweaker will steal your shit and help you look for it.
Yep. And act like they don't know where it's at. And I've done that. I could take somebody's shit because it was fell out and it was on the ground. I've gone over, taken it, did it. I won't tell you where I put it, but I had orifices to put shit. And then when they're like, "Oh shit, where's my shit?" I was like, "I don't know. Here, do you have it?" And I'd be like, "No, check my boob. No, I don't have it. Here, come on, let's look."
I was gonna say, I've been screaming for help for 5 years, and I've been screaming that, if people don't speak up, they're not helping me. No matter what they do, if they're not speaking up, they're not helping me. After what you've seen, do you understand why?
Why you say that?
Why it's their voices that are important?
Yes, it is, because if you don't speak up, like, the best way, it's something I heard like in Boondock Saints, but it's basically the gist of it is it's not so much the evils of men, but the complacency of good men. That is bad. Like, that's the worst part. It's not the evil men doing these things. It's the good men who are keeping their mouth shut and not speaking out about it. That is the problem. Because if we all speak out about it, our voices get louder as the more people speak out, and changes can happen.
Exactly.
And if you don't speak out, then nothing will happen. And I've experienced where I live, like I told you, I've had issues. The first was when I first moved in, a couple of the neighbors got together and they were like, we don't like her. She's been homeless. We don't want dirty hippie people here. And they complained about me. They made false accusations and they tried to evict me. And when I went to two of the residents that knew what was going on, one of them had been called by one of the other residents, and she is the one who had told, who I found out through, about what was being said. And the other one could tell, she could have gone to the office and been like, Joseph isn't living with her. I know where his camp is, and that's where his camp's always been. There were a couple of residents, and even the maintenance man knew. And when I asked them to make a statement or go to the office, I can't. It's my housing. I can't. It's my job. And I'm in a situation where the good people won't speak out and defend me because they are in a position where they're afraid of losing things. And that's what happens. Whether it's your housing, whether it's your financial security, whether it's your drug dealer, your plug, your pimp, your freaking road dog, Sancho dude that's taking care of you. Every human has a price. Anybody can be bought for the right price. Question is what is the right price? And the majority of people, you simply have to threaten their security in some way. With me, no. The last time somebody tried to do that, I walked out and I was like, see, I'm going to go sleep in the dumpster of Waffle House. And they're like, Waffle House? I'm like, yeah, breakfast in bed, bitch.
Absolutely. I'll go sleep in that dumpster. I've slept in McDonald's dumpsters just because they threw the food out while it was still warm.
Right. And then the dude, his drug dealer finally tracked me down. He's like, are you at the Waffle House? Where are you at? I'm looking for you behind the dumpster. And I was like, really, dude, I'm at a friend's house. What the fuck is your problem? So yeah, the guy really believed me about even now, if they really came push to shove, and my daughter knows this, my disability hearing's coming up. When that disability goes through and that back pay goes through and I'm in a position, I am moving out of here. Even if that means I get a van and live in a van in my daughter's driveway.
You know what happened to all of my back pay? It got spent going to court date after being assaulted by Waylon Lolatai and then being assaulted at Clearview. Clearview is now closed down because I spoke out, but nobody listened to me. They treat me to this day like I'm schizophrenic and delusional. And the problem is that Clearview killed a man doing exactly what I was speaking out about. And I'm going to send you the evidence of that too. And then, of course, there's Waylon Lolatai. He's the officer who assaulted me in January. He'd already lost his job for assaulting people in Denver. And instead of charging him with felony assault, as he should have been, he got to assault me. And he got to assault 6 other people. He was also involved in the Zayd Atkinson situation, where people are like, hey, they targeted him for being black. And I've got conversations with Darren O'Connor. I've got conversations with, a lot of people. Like, he was not targeted for being black. He was targeted because they thought he was homeless. You remember James, the guy with the grabber and the bucket?
Yes.
They gave him a ticket for picking up garbage.
What?
Yeah, he got a hold of me and was telling me, yeah, because John used to do that for years too, but John died. I guess he died in Denver on 16th Street Mall, but James, he did that for a lot of years. He's been doing that for like 20 years, just walking around picking up garbage. And
yeah, I remember him.
A lot of people, Darren O'Connor, turned out that he wasn't interested in actually helping out the homeless. He only wanted to help out the minorities who were victimized because you could play the race thing.
That's the only reason. He's doing it for clout and to make money. That's it.
That's what Evan said. Evan Ravitz. He Darren O'Connor slandered the shit out of him.
He what?
Darren O'Connor slandered the shit out of him. And Christine Buhit, she was telling me that, same thing. Darren O'Connor, the homeless community there in general is not happy with him because he played us. He played us straight up.
Yeah, he tried to play me. He tried to get me to go ahead in front of city council, to further his agenda and to talk about like my situation with Mike and make me the poster child. And I read right through it, and I was like, I'm not doing it, dude. Go suck a dick.
Well, he and I were trying to work together. Like before Natalie died, we were trying to get some video surveillance equipment together, and he was totally down with this and all this, that, and the other. Obviously, the stuff that I finally have, but now I can't use it to protect the homeless because I can't even go to Colorado.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you evidence of, they kept on serving me with protection orders while I was in custody and then preventing me from going to court. I was assaulted so many times in the jails, and, there's a lot of witnesses to it. You remember George Helmstetter? He used to sell meth, gray haired. Well, he was in jail with me, and he got to witness one of the assaults. And he spoke up about it. He ended up going to prison. That's what he gets for speaking up. When he got out of prison, he said, "Yeah, I saw that. I've got the conversation with him too. I'll send it to you as well." But my God, like, all right, the conversation that we've had, according to the counter on here, it's 2 hours and 1 minute long already. And I've got some that are longer. I think one of the ones with Christina is about an hour and a half long. The one with George is about, I want to say it's about an hour. One of the ones with Moose is over an hour long. I mean, these are all witnesses to the situation that happened with Natalie. Not necessarily that they were there, but like the trip to Virginia. There's a lot of these people that I was going there to see. So I'm gonna be sending you all of that. I'd like, everything that I send you. Once you start reading into it, you'll see how horrible it was. A lot of our mutual friends.
Is that she sits there and says that you followed her to Virginia, but you went because she wrapped her car around a tree.
Actually, I was gonna go earlier, but I didn't have the money, and that's because she asked me to. But yeah, absolutely. The other thing is,
she invited you, and then when you didn't do it in her time frame, she hurt herself to manipulate, to guilt you into getting there.
It worked.
Like, it did work because you and I are, we're similar on some levels with the autism, but I take people at face value. It's taken a lot of trauma and a lot of going through a lot of shit and being around people who taught me how to read people and to know when they're pulling my fucking leg and how to be patient and slow and wait for them to really, like, if I have a weird hunch, I'm like, I'm not so sure about this, really wait until their colors come out. But if I had been in that position, I would have done the exact same thing you did. Like, I wouldn't have seen the manipulation if I had been inside of it, because she was very good at what she did. She was very good at what she did.
Yes, ma'am. She definitely was.
Yep.
She was always good to me in person. It was that situation over the phone and me getting my car stuck out in the road. Like that should have never happened, Obviously, I've sent a lot more than you've been able to look at, and I got a lot more to send to you. But part of the reason I'm trying to send this to you is because I know that you, first of all, have experience in a lot of the different areas that I need help. You've also got experience on the streets, and you've got experience with a lot of these people who should have come forward from the start. So, I mean, you can verify that they exist, that they're not fake profiles that I made up. You were talking about Kat Chang. People were accusing me of making her profile up.
So what was the profile in the post Natalie put up about you? There was like a screenshot, and it had a profile, and then it looked like a video. like a screenshot, but it was like Michelle something. What was that?
That was the Michelle Brannick profile.
Okay.
I was gonna kill myself, but I didn't want Natalie to be targeted. And Joanna Taylor Smith, who you remember Janine?
Vaguely.
She had a son who's black, but she was white and older.
Okay, yeah.
Well, his girlfriend's name was Joanna Taylor Smith. She's one of the ones when they were saying that they were drug kingpins down there, and they literally only arrested the only 7 people that were just dealing pot. They had to tiptoe through that minefield of meth heads. She was one of the ones that got busted in that. She's a pretty white girl. So, like, when I was trying to explain to her stuff, she thinks that these pretty words that are supposed to work fix everything, that, obviously for pretty white girls it apparently works, but it don't work for the rest of us. They were trying to claim that she was a fake profile. But the thing is, when I was telling Joanna that I needed help, I needed her to sit down and have coffee with me and actually talk to me and actually listen to what I had to say. And she was telling me that if I killed myself, that she was gonna take it out on Natalie and Maddie and Alicia, and I couldn't have that. I just wanted my life to end. I didn't want anybody to get hurt over it. I just wanted it to end. I wanted those people to leave me alone. I wanted to be able to go see Eric or Rabbit. Sorry. I wanted to be able to go see Mobley, and he's dead. I wanted to be able to go see Christine, and I knew she was an addict, but even if you're an addict, I still love you. And even when you do hurtful things to me, I still love you. I can't turn that off. Now I had to understand that, like with my mother, she's not a good person. Every opportunity she gets, she rips us off. All 4 of her kids have been locked up for things that she did or that never happened. And, I still love her. I just know I got to keep my distance. And the thing with Natalie was that once she had that episode, I'm still there for her if she needs me. Obviously, I still love her. I'm obviously, with the thing with Angela Kurzmal and helping her out, she'd flip. She had brain damage, though. I do have to defend her on that. Angela Kurzmal had brain surgery when she was 9, and you know she's also been through a lot of abuse too. As I'm not sure if she shared that with you, but my God. But also, she's one of those people who's gonna snap at you from out of nowhere, like Mariah did. Now, when those people come back and ask for my help, even after the horrible things that they did, I still help them. But I knew that I had to, while they were having their episodes, I couldn't be there. As soon as Natalie and all that bullshit happened in Virginia, I knew that I couldn't be there. I had to leave. I can't be around people like that. The closer I am to them, the more they can pretend that everything in their lives is my fault. So, being 1,700 miles away was perfect. Finding out that Natalie was killed in Colorado, that when I was served the protection order, I was surprised that she was in the state, and I was scared because I didn't want to be that close to her or her family. It scares me, especially after everything I'd been through. And then when I was served the protection order, I was pissed off because, like, obviously she wasn't actually in the state of Colorado. She must still be in Virginia, and she was able to get a protection order from there where I couldn't even get a cop to do anything other than say, I got real police work to do and you need to man up. So by the time all that happened, and she ended up getting shot in the head, I sent a message to Sarah Rubiolo Spice, and she's one of the missing people I'd helped to find previously.
I remember that.
Yep. A lot of people do. She actually introduced her mom to me, and she invited me to her high school graduation, and it was pretty cool. Before that, I didn't even know what her name was. Before Natalie rescued me, I didn't know what her name was. Her and her sister had showed up, years after the situation with Emery and Arturo, and they were with some much older men, and they saw me and they ran over and I don't know which one gave me a hug, but they wrote down their names on a piece of paper. It was at the bank, right behind the Club Nitro. Is that what it's called? The strip club?
Yep. I know. Yeah, that one. Yeah, the bank. I know that one.
Well, I was sitting down there when they saw me, and one of them ran up and gave me a hug, and they wrote down their information for Facebook and told me to hit them up. So I sent each one of them a message. I wasn't sure how old they were, but they were only 17 at the time, of course, which I didn't know. I just assumed that with the guys that they were hanging out with, being as they had beards, that they were older.
Yeah.
And after that, I forgot about them altogether. And it's not that they weren't, nice or anything like that. Like, it's that there's a lot of other people down there, and there's a lot of people to take care of, and there's a lot of people to keep track of. And well, Sarah Rubiolo, when I had sent her and Brett Roloff, or Moose, each messages saying, "Hey guys, Natalie Bollinger is missing. If you could do something to help find her. I mean, I don't know if she's missing from Virginia or if she's missing in Colorado." So Moose, at the time, he was living in North Carolina, and I knew that, and he had invited me a few times, and that's in the recording with him, of course. But I'd let him know, you know, since I made the trip up there, and he was actually in jail, so he didn't get to visit. And afterwards, he kept on saying, "Hey man, if things are that bad there, come here to North Carolina." And I told him, "Hey man, I don't want to be that close to Natalie and her family. They're scary." And he admits that, and it was a pretty good conversation. But that's a lot of the stuff that I'm sending you. I'm sending you just a little bit at a time, and even that you might get overwhelmed. There's a lady that I had gone to before Natalie was killed, that she was a friend of mine. She's from Lodgepole, and I just reconnected with her tonight. Um, Sometimes people need some R&R, and Brenda Dickinson had told me to call Missy up and let her know what was going on, and that Missy worked with region. Well, here in western Nebraska, it's Region 1. I'm not sure what it is where she's at.
Region 2 is where I'm at. So
well,
I don't know.
It might be her. If you go to them, it might be her that you talk to. But she was painting a room, and she was having a Mike's Hard Lemonade. No horrible laws there, but when people have had a little bit alcohol in them, and that's when you call them up to pour all of everything on you. Like she snapped at me, and I was very angry. I needed help stopping the abuse I was going through, and I didn't even get to explain the abuse. It turned into a big argument, and we didn't talk for over 5 years. I sent her one of the things, I think it was the one for Mana Solves tonight, and she told me that she couldn't watch it. She sent me a message just a few minutes ago to tell me that she did watch it, and I know her. I knew her growing up. Like, I don't know if she'll be able to get to sleep tonight after watching it.
Yeah. One of the things, like, just kind of go back to the Natalie and the messages thing that I was realizing today, is in the messages with Tim Beeson, like they had talked about her fear of you, which I was absolutely like, "Are you fucking kidding me? What a crock of shit." And then, like, there was a talk about going on a motorcycle ride, and they had made plans to do that later in the afternoon on the 28th. And she said to him, "I have to take care of a few things first." That was like 11, almost 11:30 in the morning. Like, she knew she was meeting Joseph, the dude that shot her. She was planning on meeting him. Like, that really just kind of fucks my head up. Like, she made the plan with Tim Beeson to do these things, and then told him, "Okay, well, I've got to take care of some things first."
One of the officers who supposedly was investigating the case, his name is William Barr. Now, he married a friend of mine from Chapel. Her name was Jessica Martindale. And he did a lot to prevent me from being able to turn in the things that he had told me. And he had also apparently manipulated the Martindale family, and he was manipulating me too. He claimed that, first of all, he said that not only did Natalie actually post that Craigslist post, which is a big debate even to this day, did she really? He said that she had to post it twice because Craigslist took the first one down.
How are they debating that? I mean, you would think the police could track the IP and the responses and everything. Like,
well, on my court paperwork back in January, I was trying to turn in William Barr and Scott DaCosta, who's the local sheriff here. His department knew about the situation with Natalie almost a year before she was killed. They'd known about it since January of 2017. They've committed so many felonies in the last 4 years, like, oh my God, you know. And I'm in a small town here. I've moved from one end of the country to the other, and they're making it hell. Now, William Barr and Leslie Snell, and that's the paperwork I'm going to be sending you next, actually. That's my court paperwork for why they put me in prison. I'm also going to send you some conversations between me and my autism advocate. You can't release that. You can release the information in it, but there's private stuff in it, and I don't know how to edit or beep out the social security numbers or phone numbers or anything like that. But literally, there was a safety issue, and I was assaulted for trying to turn in Scott DaCosta. I was told by the Nebraska Attorney General's office that I needed to go to the Nebraska State Patrol. That was back in 2018. You know, they were aware that people in Chapel, Nebraska were assaulting me. I've got a piece of paper right here. Dual County Sheriff's Office Incident Report. It's from 6/25/2018, and it was with just one of the officers who refused to take a police report from me, and I did write one out. It says, called to the Chapel Lake due to Sean Schwartz wanting to kill himself. I spoke with Sean and he indicated he was not planning on killing himself and just needed someone to talk to. I spoke with Sean for about 3 hours in the sheriff's office about what is going on in his life. I didn't indicate that I just needed someone to talk to. I indicated over and over that I needed a real fucking cop to do their goddamn job. And the things that I talked to him about was the threats and the harassment by people in town, the assaults from people in town. A guy named Chris Kurth, I tried to turn him in. This is 2018. I'm trying to turn Chris Kurth in. And, you know, this is after multiple incidents where I'm being harassed by Natalie Bollinger's family here in Chapel at my grandma's funeral, for Christ's sake. And you know, this is what the Dual County Sheriff's Department calls real police work. This is the real police work they have to do. So Chris Kurth, I had to try to turn him in because he kept on doing this stuff over and over. So then there's a Nebraska sex offender. He's on the Nebraska sex offender registry. His name is Robert Warnick. He has threatened me on multiple occasions, and I tried to turn him in. I mean, literally, with nobody in this town willing to go in with me, and me being told I have to go to the very sheriff that knows that I'm trying to turn him and his officers in. Like, that's a conflict of interest. Now, they put me in prison. They put me in prison, literally prison, not jail. They put me in prison. I wasn't convicted of anything. I wasn't even charged with felonies. And they were able to illegally get all of the evidence that I was working on. I had to leave the town for my safety, and the sheriff here used all of the jurisdictions around here. Meanwhile, you know, there's like, for example, the next county over, Garden County. He told everywhere that I went that I was schizophrenic, and everywhere that I went, I was treated like shit. And with the Nebraska State Patrol telling me, oh, well, we can't police the police. We can't police the police. Like, this has been ongoing for years. When Michelle Quinn, who is the sheriff of Garden County, beat the living fuck out of her girlfriend, it didn't take 2 hours for them to send a state patrol officer.
Jesus.
Yeah, she actually beat the hell out of her girlfriend. And I was sitting in prison for misdemeanors of things that didn't even happen.
Yeah, I mean, you're not supposed to go to prison for misdemeanors.
Like, I wasn't convicted either. They held my evidence until the last moment and dropped the charges. my autism advocate. Her name is Meg, and she was working together with me to try to turn these guys in. And they've literally gone out of their way to do everything they can to prevent me from showing evidence, to prevent me from speaking in court. I was literally not allowed to speak in my court dates. They held several court dates without me. And, just by calling me mentally ill, and the sheriff here telling everywhere that I went that I was schizophrenic, and literally they did this to prevent me from turning them in. And this isn't the first time that they've done this. I mean, this is a tactic that they've used here in Chapel at least 6 times. This is a tactic that Waylon Lolatai used. This is a tactic that Amanda Jonas used. And when I said that I have literally hundreds of conversations with witnesses, I mean hundreds just on YouTube. There's at least 400 to 500 conversations with witnesses on YouTube that people just get on and call me a liar. They ignore that part and then they get on and say, "You're just rambling, you're just rambling." And, once you start really looking through um, the evidence that I already sent you, plus the stuff that I sent you links to, in that Natalie Bollinger group. That was started by a lady named Katie Cahill. And I'm going to send you the message with her. There was all of these people who were pretending like they were going to help me, pretending that they wanted to be friends, pretending they were going to speak up. And just like the situation with you, each one of them had their own individual reasons why that they weren't coming forward. Most of them were scared. I mean, when you see the amount of threats that are in there, like not just the 5 that I sent you, because I know we talked about that earlier. The 5 that I sent you, that's because Marcia Estrada, she's the therapist that I see. She said to just grab 5 of them. That would be good enough for now. So that's what I did. Because the stuff I'm sending to you, I'm also sending to Marcia Estrada. I'm also going to send you a link to the video with Marcia Estrada because, she admits that I'm not schizophrenic. She admits that I'm on the spectrum. She admits that I'm not delusional. She's qualified to diagnose me with these things. And she's also seen some of the evidence. The other thing is, like, for the last 3 months, we've been focused on housing, and I tried to explain to them, hey, that's not all of the reasons that I can't get into housing are all of the things that need to be addressed. I mean, the lady in housing here that was running it at the time, her name is Cindy Taylor, and she'd been in trouble more than once for not doing her job, for not working on the maintenance, things of that nature. So I mean, I tried to explain to him, yes, I need a safe place, but we need to do it quickly. And here we are 3 months later, and we're still having problems with it. They're not addressing the reason why at all. And I'm trying to explain to them, until we get something done about the abuse I'm going through, I have to continue to take it. This sheriff is rotten as shit, and he's just going to keep on doing this stuff. Now, William Barr, claiming that the things that he told me, like he's an internet investigator and that he used to work for the Denver Police Department and stuff like that. He put that in my paperwork. I mean, literally, the things that I was.
Hello?
Sorry, all I heard was.
Okay. Yeah, I think it might be. I have you on my Bluetooth at the moment. It's just easier for me to hear. I have a hard time hearing on my phone, holding my phone to my ear. So I apologize. That was me.
Well, all 4 of the people I was trying to turn in coordinated with one another to prevent me from turning them in. There is YouTube videos where, I'm literally trying to turn them in. That's literally what I've been trying to do. The crimes that they committed, they're on my YouTube, but nobody seems to care. Nobody's saying, hey, this is wrong, and actually speaking up. It's just, oh, well, you got to do this yourself. You got to do this yourself. You need to man up. I'm not even allowed to go to the courthouse because Leslie Snell, who tried, she knew that people were calling me from restricted numbers, and I can send you a YouTube video after YouTube video showing that. And people calling me up and, all hours of the night from these restricted numbers and Leslie Snell was aware that that was going on and that the Dual County Sheriff's Department, rather than investigating the crimes, and some of these people, I know exactly who they are. I mean, the numbers that they called me from, I called back, and people that I knew answered the phone. So it's not like this evidence isn't there. The problem is, without someone like you speaking up, without someone like Brenda Dickinson speaking up, or someone like Laura Nelson speaking up, and all these different people that have kids, like the some of the screenshots that I sent you were messages between me and Candace Bondurant, where she's talking about being threatened and intimidated by Michael Beard. I mean, and her landlord. So I had to go back to Denver, which obviously that is the worst possible place for me to have to go. And Laura Nelson gave me a ride to gave me a ride to Nederland, actually, which is where my friend Todd was living. And God, that was such a scary situation. Like he'd always been a hero to me, but when I got there, like she was so fucked up on ketamine. Anyway, so yeah, there's a lot of these people that pulled this manipulation stuff, but they needed to come forward. They needed to tell the truth. And the fact that the Dual County Sheriff's Department was able to obstruct an investigation with all of that shit and prevent me from turning them in. And then the way that the Nebraska State Patrol has treated me since, like they pretended that they were going to do something, but you hear their explanation and so on and so forth. Just one of those people alone flip flopped. Her name is Sergeant Jones. She's flip flopped whether or not they can investigate like 5 or 6 times already. And I've only had maybe 3 conversations with her total. And one of them was extremely short. And then there's the Investigator Woods. They made it pretty obvious that, they didn't try to investigate anything until I was assaulted by the sheriff here for trying to turn in the sheriff. And they didn't write any of that down in the paperwork. They somehow magically forgot to say that I was trying to turn them in, with the exception of Leslie Snell. But she got a protection order by going to a judge while I was in prison. And in the prison, you're not allowed to even make phone calls for the first 10 days. I have stuff written by the guards there that explains the situation with COVID and all of that. Like they literally did everything they could to prevent me from going to that court date. Meanwhile, I can prove all this stuff that I say, obviously. But now I can't even go to the courthouse. I'm not allowed to go to the courthouse. It's written down on my paperwork. And they keep telling me, oh, well, you just need to call up. No, Leslie Snell still works there. If I call up the courthouse to do these things, I'm calling literally the person I'm not supposed to call. It's on my paperwork. And they've done that repeatedly before, where they told me that it was okay for me to do something. And then when I do it, they fucking arrest me.
So you need people that can vouch for you and have your back,
and not on Facebook. I need them to actually speak up, and loud and proud, people who know me. But a lot of people
who know you, but like
they threw me away because of the trauma responses, and because I needed their help, and because they didn't take a look. None of my supposed friends actually stopped to actually take a look at this stuff until you. Everybody else wanted to tell me, oh, well, it's fine. You just need to get over it. Like, there's a difference between, let's say you were raped 20 years ago. All right. I had to deal with that stuff. A lot of us have. And people say you just need to let it go. Well, if it happened 20 years ago, it's still going to affect you, but you can do your best to move on with your life. Now, if those rapists are still raping you 20 years later and people are telling you to let it go, and you're screaming at the top of your lungs for help, and they're telling you, oh, well, you just need to let it go, like it's done and over with. Not even close. The abuse that I've endured for the last 5 years, it's not like it magically stopped. That whole year before Natalie was killed, with all of her friends harassing me and stalking me and assaulting me and shit like that, that didn't stop when Natalie was killed. That didn't stop after Natalie's killer was found. Matter of fact, it went from being about 30 to 40 people to literally thousands of people sending me threats. So a lot of that stuff that I sent you links to, and the stuff that I tagged you in that group, like you can see a lot of that stuff. But also most of that I tagged you in is evidence that I posted up in that group. you find the real nasty stuff further down in the group. Anything from Jennifer Farina Bollinger that you see, please take a screenshot of. A lot of people have also tried to become part of that group and then gone through and tried to destroy evidence by complaining about stuff that their friends didn't want up because it shows they were committing crimes and threatening my life. And one of the dudes on there, he called himself Adam Klein. He was friends with Jennifer Farina Bollinger. Every time I'd post up evidence, she'd post up like 10 or 15 posts about, oh, poor Natalie, it's horrible that you guys are listening to this guy. And my God, she didn't want it to be seen. And then with everybody calling everything spam and people threatening friends and family and, all sorts of other stuff, I had a lot of people that were willing to help me and wanted to help me, but then I had to deal with crazy people, like actual crazy people.
Yeah, I will definitely take screenshots of stuff I see like that for sure, and I will. I'm here for you, Sean. I'm going to speak the truth. I'm going to speak my personal experience, of course, my perspective, because like if you were schizophrenic, you would be talking about helicopters and red and blue cars following you. You wouldn't have the proof that you have. Like
And that's
that.
the difference between you and the cops. They have made literally every excuse that they can not to look at it. And the only couple of times that they pretended that they were going to look at it is because one of them, there's a lady named Molly Smith who went in with me and she didn't know nothing. And another one, her name is Laura Nelson, and she went in with me and she knew a lot. She knew a whole lot, but she didn't say nothing because she's afraid for her son who's autistic. Like you have to be afraid of that. And that's the thing, is if these people spoke up and helped me to show the truth, they wouldn't have to be worried about being targeted or their kids being targeted. They wouldn't have to worry about that at all they have to do is tell the truth. But then again, it's not happening to them and they haven't paid any attention, like these people who look at the Rob Gavigan thing or the Anna Solves thing or the Sword and Scale thing. Sword and Scale has 3 million subscribers. Rob Gavigan has 3 million. Sword and Scale has 3.5 million. I had people who recognized me literally every single place that I went. People recognized me from Rob Gavigan or they recognized me from one of these other sites. And there's already been 8 of them made this year. I'm going to send you links to a lot of the stuff that they tried pretending I was schizophrenic for saying, and I was locked up, so I couldn't even actually show it. So, the difference between somebody being called delusional and somebody being called honest is whether or not they can prove it. Now, when they take all of your evidence, you can't prove it. Meanwhile, Dual County Sheriff's Department, who stole all of my stuff, they lied to get an illegal warrant to prevent me from turning this stuff in. I finally had help, and every time I have actual help there, they manipulate the situation to have me removed so I can't turn them in. They did that with Jen Beebe from Region 1. They did it with um, the hospital there in Scotts Bluff. They transferred me out of jurisdiction to do this. They did it with uh, Meg. When Meg was able to get me that room up there, I was able to send her enough that she knew I was telling the truth. And they handed all of my evidence over to exactly the people I was trying to turn in. And then they outright refused repeatedly while I was it was jail. You have rights, but they're not going to observe those rights. All they got to do is turn off the cameras. Or they instigate, but the camera's in there. There's no audio in there unless there's what's called a use of force. And a use of force, they show up. Basically, they antagonize the shit out of you and deny you your rights and are literally mentally and often physically torturing you, literally torturing you. But then they get to sell their own spin on it because you don't have access to body cameras. You don't have access to any of that. And I asked for audio recording devices repeatedly. I mean, they abuse the shit out of me. And then I get treated like I'm talking about rainbows and dinosaurs and I have a magic unicorn that I ride to the moon every evening and shit like that. Like, fuck no. I'm talking about shit I have evidence of. The problem is that I can't trust the police because they're the police and I is a homeless person. And there's a popularity thing here. And if an officer decides that he's going to look at it, well, God forbid, you know. Sheriff Scott DaCosta has gone through at least 2 full rotations of deputies in this town since Natalie died, almost 3 of them. He's gone through, there's only 7 deputies and the sheriff here at any point in time. Not all of them on duty. There's only 1 or 2 of them on duty. There's only 2 towns in Dual County. Chapel, Nebraska used to have 900 people, but Cabela's closed, so it's only 500 people. And so, you know, he's getting rid of officers left and right. Every time I try to turn one in, he's like, oh, well, we can't do nothing. They already moved on. But what about the first 7 times I went to you about that officer? You know, they
that's
say
a trick they use.
It is. And they've used it repeatedly. They used it in Colorado. They used it in South Dakota. They used it in Wyoming.
It's almost like the Catholic Church relocating priests that are sexually abusing children. They don't fire them. They just relocate them.
Exactly.
Yep.
So, it's like 11:43. I know you usually go to bed around 8, so you're up a little bit late.
I was about to say that. Like, I'm gonna have to get to bed. I got to get up like at 6:30, get these kids off, get them to school. I can catch up on my sleep, so I don't mind having stayed up this late. But I do need to be tying it up so I can get to bed. And I will touch base with you tomorrow. Since I don't really have anything to do tomorrow, I'm going to be going through this stuff. Like, I don't have any appointments, so.
Yes, ma'am. And thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Once you've gone through a bit of it, you know, there's a lot of stuff that I asked you about that I really thought that you'd gone through more than you had. But that was, you know, obviously my assumption. I knew that with your situation, there was a possibility you hadn't been able to go through a whole lot.
And when I'm going through things, I'm saving everything and putting it into an organization method that makes sense to me. If that makes any sense. So all of that evidence is not in my email. It's being backed up too.
Yes, ma'am.
So.
Well, you see why I'm screaming for help, right?
Yes. Oh, I would be screaming for help too. You know, because you have the receipts, so to speak. You have the evidence.
Yes, ma'am. So, I just need someone to look at it instead of blow me off and try to do the housing thing for 4 years like I've been going through. People's voices is what I need, and that's exactly your. Thank you so much, and I'm sorry that they used your son like that. I mean,
not your fault. It is not your fault. It is all on them and being shitty human beings. You know, and I mean, I'm mad that they used my son against you. That's really where it comes down to. But my phone is beeping, and I got to get it on the charger too. So I am gonna let you go.
Be safe. Love you lots. Stay out of trouble or don't get caught.
Okay, I'll talk to you later.
Later, Mandy. Bye.
Bye.
I told the truth. You'd hope that'd be obvious by now. I'm going to try to post as many links down on the bottom of this as possible. And then send the link to this video to Marcia Estrada and the other people.